Story 1. My manager started snapping her fingers in my face, 3 inches away from my eyes, saying in a slow drawl, "You're doing it wrong. Hello? That's not how I told you to do it." When I was folding the shirt somewhat slower and less optimally than I was shown, though achieving the same fold. It was also my third week and one of 20 folds I had to learn on that job. I walked right then and there. Story 2. I worked for a call center for American Telephone and Telegraph. I refused to try and sell a direct television package to a woman who was literally bawling her eyes out on the phone because she was having to switch her phone plan to her name instead of her husband's name because he had just died. Story 3. My manager's boss did a surprise inspection, and my boss wrote me up for doing my job the exact way he trained me. Apparently, when he trained me, he was cutting corners. Story 4. I was a receptionist for a medical software company. My boss refused my request for a single day off to take my teenage daughter to get eye surgery. I waited until the first day of her 2-week vacation and put in my notice. Ruined her holiday. Story 5. The company told me I was to enforce 2 new policies. All employees must report to work 15 minutes early for their shift. However, they would not be paid for that time. All employees must take their unpaid lunch break in specific areas under very specific circumstances. I told them we needed to have a meeting to discuss the legality of their new policies before I could enforce them on my team. They replied, "Either you enforce the policies or you resign your position." I said, "See you." They begged me to reconsider and to not make a bad decision, just because I was upset. Unfortunately, I was already out the door. Story 6. I was waiting tables while I was in graduate school. I had requested a weekend off far in advance, right after I got my syllabus, because there was a seminar pertinent to a class. Our professor expected us to go and write a paper. It was a decent chunk of our grade. The weekend comes up and, lo and behold, I'm scheduled doubles Friday through Sunday. I hunt down the manager and say I can't do that and I've given months' notice. She pulls the requests are just requests, not guarantees. And I tell her point blank I will fail this class if I don't go. She shrugged and said, "That isn't my problem." I told her, "It is now," and left. Like hell I was going to fail a class for my master's degree waiting tables at a rainforest cafe. Story 7. This was 20 years ago. My fiancée had been hospitalized for 16 months after a car accident. When she passed away, my boss would not let me have time off for bereavement because we were not legally married. Story 8. I was working when I got the call that my partner of 7 years had been in a terrible car accident while visiting family in Florida. He was in the hospital, and his mother called me to tell me he wasn't awake yet. I was obviously devastated and scared out of my mind. I told my coworkers and boss because it was obvious I was panicking, and they told me to take the rest of the weekend off so I could deal with things and prepare and clean his apartment for when or if he got back. Specifically, they said to come back Monday, and it was a Friday. The next day, I was cleaning up his apartment when I got the call from my boss screaming about why I hadn't come into work that day. I told him that I recalled him telling me to take the weekend off and come back Monday. He said to come to work immediately because they needed me. Against my better judgment and my emotional state, I showed up and clocked in. The boss came up to me, threw the stack of checks down on the counter that had just come in, and told me, "If you do that again, you're fired." This was someone who had never yelled at me before or even dared speak to me in any stern way. Prior to my arrival, their store was an absolute mess, and I spent all of my free time, what little there was, reorganizing and cleaning and setting up new systems. For some reason, the fact he chose to start speaking to me this way and demanding my attention at that time just made me snap. A chord was struck, and it resonated strongly. I got the message clearly. He was one of those bosses who became controlling of anyone who became of value to him and his business. The moment you weren't available when they needed or even wanted you to be, they were going to make you feel bad about it, so you were afraid to ask for more personal time or any other leniencies that took you away from work. I was literally reeling. I saw red. The moment he turned his back, I snatched my check, walked out with a full line of customers at the counter, and the phone going off with incoming orders, and drove off. He blew up my phone all day. I never came back or called back. Fortunately, he made it home safe and healed up fine. Unfortunately, he passed away on our anniversary a few years later. I regret every moment I passed up to spend time with him over that job or any job, for that matter. I know barely anyone is going to read this now that it's buried under a pile of other comments. But it still felt nice to type it out. Edit. I've probably said kind words over a dozen times, but I really do mean it. Reddit can be just as comforting as it can be cruel. So it means a lot that you've all carved out a few seconds from your day to recognize me and my story and to say some things. His name was Anthony, and I want everyone to know what an amazing, brilliant, kind, gentle man he was. Strong, dark, and stern, yet he was the light of my life. Please, please, please take the extra moment to ask your loved ones if they're okay. Story 9. Many years ago, while working in a manufacturing facility, my boss came into work already upset because his wife served him divorce papers. Saying good morning was apparently enough to set him off, and he picked up a wrench from the table and threw it at my head. I ducked, it missed, then I just closed my toolbox and wheeled it to the truck. Story 10. One very busy night while waitressing, I was standing at a table of 12 in the middle of taking their order when another waitress came up to me and said our boss wanted us in their office that instant. So I leave my full section in the middle of chaos to go see what the problem is. My boss began to criticize us both because the other girl asked if I would switch shifts with her and I had agreed. I didn't say anything but was obviously annoyed because I had just left all my tables thinking there was some sort of emergency. My boss looked at me and asked why I looked mad, and I told him, I feel like this could have been sorted out without me. If you didn't want her to leave early, you could have just told her no instead of pulling me away from our customers. They said, if you're going to have an attitude, get your things and leave. I said okay and went to transfer my tables. I was over it. I had worked there 3 years and the owners were alcoholics that treated us like garbage and spent all the company money on themselves instead of getting ingredients to make food or paying their employees. The other waitress came back out and said our boss wanted me back in the office. I went in and they said, put your apron back on, you're not fired. I said, you're both crazy if you think you can treat people the way you do and expect them to want to work for you. And I walked out. As I was leaving, they came out behind me saying I would regret it and was never allowed back if I left. I threw up my middle fingers and kept walking. Funny part is I let my boyfriend take my car to work that night, so I had to walk a mile home and break into my house. Story 11. Was having a meeting with the boss who was a difficult guy to work with, and he stood up and punched the wall. He wasn't doing it jokingly. He bare-knuckled went at the wall of his own office like he was in the gym hitting a punching bag. I sat there in astonishment for about 2 seconds, then stood up and left, cleared out my desk and exited through the back door without a word to anyone. There's no place for that conduct in the professional world, even if the guy does own the company. Story 12. He would not train me properly, then come yell at me in front of the office. He would always threaten my job or suggest hiring someone else, and I finally said I hope you find someone better because I quit and will be leaving once the other lady comes back from lunch. He tried to backpedal and asked if I was serious. I never looked back. Edited to add. He hired me without any experience because he knew he could offer me a low salary. I got paid very little for what someone with experience would get paid. Story 13. At one office job, I quit after the first day because the lady training me would ignore me when our manager was not around, and I caught her snooping through my purse when I went to the bathroom. At another job at a clinic, I quit after a month because they made me do a solo receptionist shift without training me on what I needed to do to open the clinic, and then I got yelled at for not knowing what to do in front of patients. It was so bad. Some of the patients came up to me after and asked if I was okay. Story 14. I was vomiting in the parking lot every day before walking into my job from stress. Then one day I was kicked in the teeth, literally, by one of the clients, and my boss would not let me leave to go to the dentist. I went anyway, was docked pay for my time at the emergency appointment, and then they begged me not to sue. Quit. Story 15. I was exhausted, had been working 50-plus-hour weeks, and couldn't wait until Christmas break. I was the only person out of 25 required to work Saturday mornings on a 6-week fundraiser in addition to my regular hours. Others were only scheduled once. I was scheduled all 6 Saturdays. Finally, a foreign colleague wanted to work Christmas so she could go to her home country early in the next year. The entire office was supposed to be closed for those 2 weeks. The boss picked me to be with her and refused to let me say no. I didn't want to take a break later when the rest of my family would have been off over Christmas. And I couldn't bear to have waited another 2 weeks as I was barely hanging on right then. She wouldn't let it go, so I quit. The boss decided to work with her herself. That was fine with me. The mystery is why it had to be me or her out of 25 coworkers. Well, not my problem. Story 16. I never have, but my favorite example was when a coworker in student transportation, who had finally gotten a position she wanted after years of suffering through stress in another, was called by management over the summer and told she was being reassigned to the stressful position because no one else wanted to do it. She had fought too long and hard to get what she wanted, and her immediate response was, "Then tell me what I need to do to resign." She did, and she's been at peace with her decision ever since. Story 17. Godfather's Pizza. The manager would not give me my paycheck at 8 p.m. on Sunday because the money might not be in the account yet, but I could pick it up at 9 a.m. on Monday. This was decades ago, before direct and mobile deposits. The bank would not be open until the next day anyway. All of the paychecks were literally in his hand at that moment. There were lots of issues before that, but that was the final sign that the manager was completely uninterested in reason. In the next few weeks, nearly everyone else quit. Then the manager was finally fired. Story 18. Not me, but a colleague once wrote a long, critical email, hit send at 10:30 a.m., and exited the building immediately. He blind copied all recipients but sent it to multiple departments of a large multinational company I was working at. No one knew who did or didn't receive the email, except for the gasps and reactions around the office. He was completely disgruntled and criticized multiple managers, supervisors, and various colleagues with absolute intensity. It was amazing, still the best work email I've ever received, and some issues he highlighted actually had to be addressed by management. It brought about a lot of positive change. If you're out there, Khalil, that was awesome. Story 19. When I was 20, I worked a commission-based sales job. The manager hated me for some reason. I genuinely, to this day, have no idea why. I tried really hard, had a good attitude, and followed all the rules. My sales weren't extraordinary, but I always met my numbers. My grandmother died about 6 months into the job. I texted my manager to tell him I'd be taking my 3 days of bereavement as allowed by the union. I even apologized for the inconvenience, as though I could control my grandmother's death. He called me the day after she died, accusing me of lying, saying I was lazy and just wanted the time off. Keep in mind, I'd never called out before or even been more than 5 minutes late to a shift. I sent him medical documentation proving she'd had a stroke during the night and passed away. He called me back and said fine, I could have that day off, but he better see me the next day, my 3rd day of union-protected bereavement, or I'd be fired. Stricken with grief but terrified of losing my job, I drove the 2 hours back to my apartment from my grandmother's house that night. The next morning, I went into work tired and melancholy. He told me to smile because no one wants to buy cell phones from a sad girl. I plastered on a smile and hit the sales floor. At lunchtime, I cried my eyes out in my car, reapplied my makeup, and went back to work with my fake smile. I was in the middle of helping a customer when he came over and started asking the customer all the same questions I had to see what products they'd be eligible for. The customer was baffled and told him I'd already covered everything and that no further help was necessary. He went on a rant about what a terrible, useless employee I was. I looked at the customer and said, "I'm so sorry to leave you with him, but as of this moment, I quit." The manager followed me to the break room, shouting and raving while I gathered my purse, turned in my equipment, and clocked out. He followed me to my car, still berating me. Finally, that same customer I walked away from came out and physically stood between me and the manager so I could get in my car and drive away. The manager proceeded to call me every day for a week and leave abusive voicemails about me missing shifts because he didn't accept my resignation. He even called me the day of my grandmother's funeral and said now that she'd been cremated, I had no excuse not to come back to work. I hope he eventually got a taste of his own medicine. Story 20. I was a supervisor of housekeeping at a hotel. Every holiday, all of management would take off, leaving me the highest in charge. I asked for a raise after working a full year of holidays as the only management and was denied. The next year, on the biggest party day in the city, I set all my employees up with their work and texted the managers a picture of me at the bar partying, telling them the hotel might be on fire. I don't know. Quit. Story 1. I have worked in human resources for a couple of years now, mostly for large firms managing facilities within properties. One of the strangest cases was brought about because a client asked us to review closed-circuit television footage. He had driven past the office late at night and noticed the motion sensor lights inside going on and off, and he was concerned that there had been a break-in. It turned out our night security officer, whose primary role is to monitor cameras from the control room, was skipping up and down the corridors because he felt too full of energy and had to get it out of his system somehow. Watching the footage of him skipping and occasionally doing star jumps through vacant corridors for 20 minutes at 1 a.m. really made my day. Story 2. Got a call from our office in India that staff who supported the night shift were running a brothel from the office. They didn't know they couldn't do that. Still fired. They tried to appeal the decision. It did not work. Story 3. Worked for a large trucking company. Every employee would receive a present on their birthday in the mail, and their names would be displayed on the video board. This week's birthdays are: a guy called to ask if his name could not be on the board. The reason: his twin brother murdered their parents, and he did not want to be reminded of his birthday. Story 4. I no longer work in human resources or at this company, but it's my favorite story from my time there. Our benefits team made the decision to eliminate reserved parking as many employees were frustrated when they walked past dozens of empty spots in the reserved lots every day. This new policy applied to all of the company's locations. Of course, the benefits manager received hundreds of complaints in the first few days from people insisting they needed an exception for their own personal spot. The best reason by far was from one person who needed a spot close to the door because they were terrified of bobcats. No other context. We didn't have bobcats near the corporate office, so at first we thought they meant construction equipment. It turns out there actually were sightings of bobcats, like the animal, near this person's location. Last I heard, they were told to arrive earlier to get a closer spot and didn't get an exception. Story 5. One of the dumbest things: an employee who worked night audit at a hotel parked his car at the entrance and would occasionally go out there to drink a bottle of vodka in full view of the cameras. He didn't even sit in his car to drink, just grabbed the bottle out of the car each time and drank in the open. Seriously, he could have put it in a water bottle and drank at the desk and would not have been caught as soon as he was, if at all. Story 6. I am not in human resources, but my sister-in-law used to work in that field for a large Canadian technology firm. An executive at the company got very drunk at a conference in Las Vegas, and the company received a call from the hotel saying they would have to pay for outside contractors. He had smeared his feces all over the walls of his hotel room, and the hotel cleaning staff refused to deal with it. Story 7. My dad works in human resources. He just told me about a day when they had to lay off about half of the company. It was crazy, and there were a whole lot of moving parts that day. Unfortunately, in all the craziness, no one remembered to tell this one new hire that, sadly, the position he was hired for was no longer affordable. So he came into the office only to see everyone clearing out their desks and leaving. And then he got laid off an hour into his first day. He said the guy understood, but it was the most horrible he ever felt for someone in his life. Story 8. Not human resources, but have been on teams to interview and have input on possible hires. One standard question: what would you do if you were having problems with a coworker? Answers can include: I would try and work it out, or I would take it to a manager, etc. His answer: I'd take him out back and beat the crap out of him. He was surprised when he didn't get the job. Story 9. Obscuring a few details here, you'll understand why in a second. There was a mid-level supervisor at a state agency I never got along with. The guy was nasty, argumentative, a real piece of work, but still had a decent number of people loyal to him. I come in one day and he's not there, and everyone was distraught. It turns out law enforcement had come after the guy and caught him red-handed trafficking child pornography. Rather than arrest him immediately, they gave him the option to return home, settle his affairs, and maybe call his lawyer. He took the opportunity to hang himself in his own garage instead. The next couple of weeks was just damage control among the staff when the details came out. It was a horrible situation all around. Story 10. Call center employee calls human resources to complain about their supervisor. He's abusive. He won't even let me leave my desk. Supervisor calls human resources to complain about employee. Can you please tell her that she's allowed to leave her desk? Oh my God. She's using the trash can inappropriately. It may sound humorous, but there were significant mental issues at the heart of this. Story 11. I had to see a video of a guy who defecated on himself during work while running to the restroom because his manager would not let him leave a meeting early. The guy had inflammatory bowel disease, and the manager knew this, so the video shows him running down the hall, and literally a few feet from the restrooms, he starts defecating on himself and you see it coming down his pant leg. He looked to be in pain because he kind of collapsed and then got back up. People were baffled when they saw this live, and the manager was fired, so definitely the weirdest incident I've ever seen. Literally. Story 12. I once had a temporary job in human resources. I was scanning lots of old personnel files, and the one perk of the job was reading old complaints against people. The best one I came across was a mediation caused by one member of staff accusing another of witchcraft. Story 13. I've shared this story before, but an employee from a different country and culture never showered. He said that where he comes from, they shower about once a month. His co-workers complained of the smell, which was extremely offensive. His supervisor eventually sent him home and told him he couldn't come back until he showered. It was a union business, and the employee filed a grievance with the union representative. They came into my office, which has a camera because it was where we had all major disciplinary meetings. The moment they walked into my office, I almost gagged from the smell. It was suffocating. I had 2 chairs in front of my desk and I asked them to take a seat while I went and pulled his file. When I left, I pulled the door closed behind me. I went to my boss's office, told him the situation, and asked him to pull up the camera in my office. It was hilarious. The union representative was holding his shirt over his nose and telling the employee, "You're killing me. You've got to take a shower." After letting them marinate in the stench for about 10 minutes, I went back in and the union representative retracted his grievance and agreed to send the employee home. Story 14. I got a call from a woman I'd never spoken to, asking when she could start. She had received a job offer after interviewing with a manager for a customer service position. She told me, but no one ever contacted her about a start date or pre-employment processes like a background check, and it had been a month. After a lengthy investigation, it came out that this manager had fabricated a job opening and offered it to this woman in an attempt to impress her. She quit her job, but, it should be noted, did not respond to the manager's romantic overtures, with the expectation of joining my company. She got a settlement with a non-disclosure agreement and the guy who hired her got fired. There was also a guy who faked his son's death for some extra paid time off. Story 15. The maintenance guy had been living above the ceiling of the building. He had built a small living area with electricity and a small fridge and everything. For years. Story 16. I used to work at a staffing agency that placed people in manufacturing positions. Everyone had to be drug tested at the office as part of the orientation. If the test results came back as inconclusive, we would send the potential hire to a medical lab. They would take another drug test, and the lab could determine if the person was on a prescription or using illegal drugs and, therefore, not eligible for hire. One guy failed his drug test at the lab. He came back to the office claiming that it wasn't his fault. He explained that he was riding in a car with his head out of the window. Then, when the car passed under a bridge, someone threw a bunch of cocaine off the bridge. It hit him in the face, and he accidentally inhaled it. Story 17. I work for a software development consulting company where we go onto client sites and help them develop custom software. One person, super nice with about 7 years of experience, goes on to their first client site with the company and all is good for about 3 weeks until the following happens in increased escalation every couple of days. 1. I don't think the manager likes me. The manager is bad-mouthing me to others. The manager isn't including me in meetings, so I don't know they're happening and miss them. The manager is taking away my completed tasks from the board. so I don't look like I am being productive. The manager is logging onto my computer remotely and reading my personal emails. The manager is changing my time cards, which the manager has absolutely no access to. Essentially, it turned out that the person had mental health challenges and thought the manager was sabotaging their every move on the client site. The paranoia just kept going. Unfortunately, they got kind of belligerent at the end. I hope they got the help they needed, but it was super uncomfortable. How do you tell someone that their perception isn't reality? Story 18. The family of the man who passed away came to speak to us, as it was in a factory environment, to get pension documents and so on. We sent them away with a to-do list. 1 hour later, reception informed us that Mr. X's family was here. Strange, since the documents take a few days to get. Nope, it was a new family. Yes, the man had 2 different families, who were about to have an unexpected surprise. Story 19. I was a recruiter, and you would be shocked to see what some people actually have as their personal email. Most people have come around to using just their name, but then every once in a while you have to verify that brownglitter69 is in fact how they would like to be contacted. Story 20. An information technology guy who worked the overnight shift because he was doing support for our Asia and Europe regions got written up for improper use of company systems. He had dozens, if not hundreds, of Google image searches related to foot fetish content like insert celebrity here feet, along with other random searches like cute toes. Like, dude, you're in information technology. You know this stuff is tracked and that your boss could easily monitor it. Story 21. We had this new hire. I heard about him through the grapevine. He was fired from his last job for inappropriate behavior in the break room. Somehow, he was hired by my company, and God knows why, because I haven't heard a single good thing about him from anyone ever. His job was to sweep the floors of our factory. That's not backbreaking work. It's pretty much endless, but you can take it slow and have time to chat with other employees and roam around. We have retired and disabled people who do that job, and they are fine with it. In the first 3 weeks he was there, I got so many write-ups, extended break time, job not done after multiple requests, smoking on the job and not in a designated area, constantly on his phone, and complaints, racist/sexist jokes, body odor, occupational safety and health administration violations, not wearing personal protective equipment. About him, it was hard to keep track. So I did what I always do, fast-tracked his termination and sent it to the head of human resources. I heard nothing about it until a few weeks later when I started receiving complaints about him again. I went to see the head of human resources, asking if those were just delayed paperwork because in my mind he was fired weeks ago. Turns out he was never fired. He was the nephew of the head of human resources. She transferred him to another department. She took every complaint about him directly, except one that got to me. He was now a security guard, but not like you see at a music festival. He was a button operator. He operated the button to let the people in the factory and kept track of everybody that entered or left the site. He was under training with the sweetest old lady there is. Everybody, even the chief executive officer, calls her grandma because she is just so sweet. I encountered grandma on break one day, and she looked disturbed. It was not her usual break time, so I asked her what she was doing in the break room alone so early. She told me, "It's the new hire's personal time." I asked her what she meant. She told me, "Well, I made lots of complaints about it. Haven't you read them?" I said, "No, none of them got to me." She looked disturbed and almost like crying. She then told me, since he was transferred to her, he noticed there was a computer at his post to log ins and outs. Bear in mind, this computer does not connect to the internet. Well, the second day, while grandma was gone to the bathroom, he started inappropriate behavior with materials he brought from home on a flash drive. She caught him and he acted like it was no big deal. In the weeks that followed, he continued to behave inappropriately on the job to the point where he would not even stop when grandma caught him. He told her, "I don't care if you watch, but if you don't want to see it, just leave." So she made a schedule where every 2 hours, she would leave for 15 minutes for him to do his business. I was upset and went straight to the head of human resources with it. I told her that grandma had gotten a lawyer and was threatening to sue the company. I knew it was false, but that's the only thing that could make things move. The matter was transferred to the legal department, and he was fired that very morning. The head of human resources still argued that without proof, we could not fire him. The meeting ended with her storming out and saying, "Fine, do whatever you want." She quit a few months after that. I'm very glad you all enjoyed that. I have so many more memories about this place of work. Not all about human resources, but this place of work is basically like the TV show Dallas. Story 22. One of my relatives worked in tech support for a really high-profile company in Silicon Valley during the height of the dot-com boom. Some guy who desperately wanted to work there was emailing his resume to human resources 1,000 times every day. Several times a day, the number of emails would get too overwhelming. So the people in human resources would just select all the emails in the inbox and delete all of them, whether the emails were from the applicant or not. My relative had to show them how to filter emails from the applicant. Story 1. In 5 years, if I reach a point where I no longer need to worry about food, shelter, and clothing, I would like to focus on something spiritual, something beyond the basic necessities of life. Story 2. In my vehicle, searching for a perfect vacation home while also driving across my homeland and actually exploring the United States, which is something I have always wanted to do. I'm already in a good place, so I just have to keep going up. Story 3. 5 years from now, I just hope I am not still explaining to my mom why I cannot pause an online multiplayer game. But seriously, ideally, I would like to be debt-free, thriving in a job I do not dread, and maybe, just maybe, owning a plant that has not died. Story 4. This thread will probably be full of depressing stuff, so I'll lean on the optimistic side. Hopefully by then, I will have finished the book I am writing and be a good way into the sequel. Now that I am done with college, my free time has really opened up. I just have to make myself do the work. It's difficult for me due to executive dysfunction, which is why I'm still not finished after almost 12 years of on and off work. But I am on rewriting for the first book now, so there's a good chance I can continue to make progress. Story 5. Where? Right where I am right now. I hope my older son will have graduated by then, and my younger son will study something that he loves. I hope my cats will still be around and that my wife will still love me. I want to keep being successful at my job, and I hope I will still be making music with people I like. Story 6. Ideally, I will be a college or perhaps graduate student, a successful novelist, mentally healthy, and married. Realistically, I would settle for being a college student, mentally healthy, still trying to develop a fiction career, and engaged. Story 7. I am 38 and in mechanical engineering school going for my second degree. The first one was not paying the bills, paycheck to paycheck with 2 jobs. I just hope this pays off. I have been poor all my life. I am sick and tired of it. Crying as I type this. I want a decent car that I do not have to constantly work on, and when it does break, I want the money to just take it somewhere. I want a nice little apartment that is all mine, no roommates. Right now in school, I am actually living with my mom at 38. I could not feel more like a failure. Yeah, people say, "Good for you," when I tell them I am back in school, but it always feels so condescending. I do not know, I just want to feel like I have enough. I am willing to move literally anywhere in the country. I just want to live in a big city, and it does not even have to be that big. Just somewhere with culture and things to do, and I hope a really decent makerspace is not too much to ask. I just want to feel like I am succeeding. Story 8. The answer to this question is always the same. Where do I see myself in 5 years? Here, at this very company, where I will have ascended to whatever job title is sensible relative to where I'll be in 5 years, usually the next level or 2 levels up. So if you start as a coordinator, you could say you hope to be a senior widget maker in 5 years' time with an eye on proving yourself for more management responsibilities. Story 9. If we can maintain our jobs and standard of living by then, I'll be happy. It's really hard to stay on top of inflation and the general cost of living. On a positive note, I'll have one child almost done with high school and the other going into high school. It's the end of an era taking care of young kids. I also hope to still be going to the gym and in good health. Story 10. Some great replies here. Legitimately thinking of my future, home ownership, somehow, engaging with my hobbies and with a good group of friends. Story 11. I am 17. When I am 22, I want to graduate from university with some solid work experience under my belt and a decent job off the bat. But that's fairly optimistic. Story 12. Where I hope to be and realistically don't go together. Where I hope to be isn't asking for much, but even in a realistic sense, it's not going to happen. Story 13. Filled with retirement. Running a manageable and profitable hobby-type business. Staying up later, sleeping in, and doing what I want for myself. Spending time in the woods and on the water with my puppy. Trying out my first all-inclusive vacation. I've got lots of plans, all pretty simplistic. Story 14. Retired. Spending my days working on my classic vehicles and riding my motorcycle around the neighborhood. Spending my nights dancing with some nice older ladies or sitting on my patio with a Jack and Coke in one hand and a cigar or joint in the other. Story 15. Hopefully, in a place where I am able to feel happy and mostly anxiety-free. I would like to have a good job and a home to call my own, even if it is just an apartment. A partner would be nice too, but I do not want to rush that since I am going through a breakup right now. Story 16. Sad that so many people say dead. I want to make it to 80 minimally. In 5 years, I have no clue. Alive and healthy, I am hoping. Enjoying the earth and all the beautiful things on it. Remembering my beautiful friends and pets who have crossed over into the ethereal, and hoping to not have another mental breakdown, quite honestly. Story 17. I'm kind of watching my dreams come true at the moment, which is really exciting and a little bit scary. I'm seemingly on track to make my big dreams a reality. Here's hoping. Story 18. With an electrical engineering degree and a financially stable household, I don't have to choose between gas and cigarettes. I can also buy my daughter the best head start I can give her. Don't you dare go hollow out there. Story 19. Still above ground, I hope. Anything else is negotiable. I spent my entire life working to make other people happy. Now it's time to go have some fun. Story 20. Starting a family. I just got my dream job making $120,000 a year. Now I could support a family. I think it could take a while to meet the right person though. But I hope not. I would love to be a dad and I want my kids to have a really solid mom. Story 21. Today I wish I were dead. It's all I can think about since I woke up, and all of last week too. I went to Thanksgiving, and after the visit with family, I realized how little I actually get of actual good, solid moments of love. I realized that people love themselves, not me. I realized I'm breaking my back for no one who appreciates it. The reason I'm still here is because I love my kids. Full stop. I can't stop thinking about putting a bullet in my head and how, if I did, the world would just keep spinning. My family would be beyond devastated. But right now I feel like I'm angry at them for leaving me to rot. I'm frustrated with them. Never have I felt so alone. Never have I wanted to just end it all. Story 22. On a homestead with many acres, I grew up working on my granduncle's ranch and homestead. I should have started life that way. Trying to make cities work is a mistake. Story 23. In 5 years, I think I will probably have a home and a child, considering how many we want. I was thinking 2 or 3, but I don't know. You have to make it through one first. Also, financially, I've been saving, so at that point, retirement is feasible but would not be comfortable. Story 24. Right here in my apartment, still giddy from having survived Trump's last term, still amazed that he stepped down and weepy when I think of the brand new Madam President in the Oval Office. Crossing fingers. Story 25. Secure job and settle down somewhere. I am a young environmental professional, and much of the work is seasonal and can take you all over the country. I have been to Vermont, California, Kansas, and several other states doing temporary positions. I want to be able to have something full-time that pays well. Story 26. I have retired from nursing and live between Indiana and Southeast Asia. My house will be paid off or nearly paid off. I am back in shape and working on my oil paintings. Story 27. Hopefully, I'm still hanging around. I'm 68 next year, and I have had some health issues, but time is healing me. I hope that we don't lose Social Security and Medicare from the new administration. I also hope to move closer to family. Story 28. Have a job I like. paying for my own home and having paid off my car. Preferably in good shape with a handful of cool new skills I've learned, with a girlfriend and a few pets. Story 29. With a promotion and getting paid more. Currently, I am a night patrol security guard with a small company of only 8 people. I've been with the company for 5 years now and have been doing double duty by conducting field training since the boss had a stroke and can no longer drive or do the training himself. The company is in the process of being sold to become part of a larger company, since the soon-to-be new owners have promised that everyone will keep their jobs. There might finally be room for advancement. Story 30. If life keeps going well, working part-time with a 2-year-old in a house my husband and I own. But just because that's our plan now doesn't mean it will actually happen. We just need to see what happens over the next few years and if housing prices come down. Story 31. I want to possibly have my first child, no debt with my house set up exactly how I want, and to still be happily married. I think that is all I could ask for. Story 32. Touching around 800,000 in net worth. I would say my first million, but that would take a little more work and a whole lot of luck. As far as life as a whole, doing all the things I do now, just better versions of it. I love my place, car, clothes, social circle, hobbies, and so on. That being said, I would take securing my current lifestyle over upgrading it in a heartbeat. Story 33. A job where I save without dipping into it. Married to my best friend with a kid. This keeps me going honestly because I had some bad news today and I need to remind myself I have this to look forward to. I have to keep going. Story 34. Financially stable with my own lover, pet, home, hobbies, friend group, and better mental health. Bare minimum stuff, but I did not have any of this much growing up. So, I see myself living a successful, to me, life. It will be hard, but I have always made it through. Story 35. In 5 years, I hope to be successfully managing my application, enjoying steady user growth, and seeing the positive impact it has on people's daily lives. I would love to still be stationed in Japan, hiring passionate individuals to join my team, and finally paying off the debt and loans I took on to self-fund this journey. It has been a challenging but rewarding experience, and I cannot wait to see how it evolves. What is your realistic vision for 5 years from now? Story 36. 5 years employed, just got hired after 1 year unemployed, and happy. If I could manage being happy and taking care of my family without being employed, that would be better, but you did say realistically. Story 37. Being happy, healthy, wealthy, and full of love with low amounts of stress and loads of free time. Is it realistic? If I take the proper steps and create a conducive mindset, absolutely. Story 38. I suffered from severe epilepsy from 2018 to 2021. This year, I decided to make the most of the second chance at life, so I'm back in school getting my grade 12, and I plan on entering an engineering program next year. So hopefully, 5 years from now, I'll be graduating and making my late father proud. It's never too late, folks. I'm only 26, but I honestly didn't think I'd have another chance at this when I was having multiple attacks a day. As long as I am seizure-free, I'm not too worried about the future anymore. Story 39. Getting paid above the poverty line wages for a job I not only tolerate but love. Hopefully, this means my YouTube channel gets popular because right now it's slow going on the monetization front, my friends. Story 40. Living in a nicer home in a nicer neighborhood. Where we are now is fine, but we are hoping not to have to settle for fine. I would like to see our net worth double before we make that move, though. Story 41. Out of the hole. The past 5 years have been disaster after disaster and I'm wiped. Just in 2024, I got a driving under the influence charge in January. I had 2 drinks. Spent $8,500 on a lawyer to get it pleaded down to reckless driving, which isn't a felony, which he did. And 8 months later, 2 hurricanes hit my state in 2 weeks. My car is totaled, and the helpful insurance guy I spoke to when I got my financial responsibility insurance certificate. Additional insurance you pay when you get a major traffic infraction like reckless driving, told me that the policy he approved me for is comprehensive and includes liability. I asked the man if I still need my old policy. He says no, and I cancel it. Fast forward 2 months. My car is totaled in a flood, and now I have no insurance. The Federal Emergency Management Agency says they can't provide assistance to anyone whose losses are insured. The Federal Emergency Management Agency also told me they only provide assistance for car damage to people who already have insurance. So now, I'm on probation. My car is totaled with no insurance and a $14,000 loan still to be paid. I'm taking Uber to get to work, and I still have $1,300 in court fees and 40 more hours of community service to complete before July. In 5 years, I better be in a nicer living situation, sober, in better shape, with a big savings account built up. We can make these changes. We can have the goals we set if we stay focused. I hope you all get what you want. Story 42. These days, I just hope to be alive. I was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer this year, at the age of 35. Before my diagnosis, I was hoping to have something good going with someone in a committed relationship. I wanted to maybe own a place. I wanted to be in a good spot with my career. I wanted to be further along with my hobbies, particularly guitar activities. Anyway, I hope I can still have at least a little bit of those things, but mostly I just hope I'm alive. Story 43. Hopefully still alive with my partner in a home and not renting. I'm satisfied with my current job and lifestyle. Just hope to keep that or something similar. There are plenty of hobbies I'd like to get back into. Best of luck to those of you battling cancer, seriously. Story 44. Alive. I had my first heart attack this year. Not a pleasant experience, but thanks to modern medical technology, I got to see my own beating heart working away while still in my chest. Beats the old-fashioned Aztec way of showing a person their own heart. Laugh out loud. Story 45. A stable job, a healthy and active routine, friends that I can count on and laugh with, and last but not least, having my significant other whom I would love dearly by my side. Story 46. I had cancer twice in 4 years, so I hope to be alive for another 5 without any medical issues. At this point, I'm just happy to be alive, and I'm not making life plans or being sad when I don't hit certain goals. Things happen and will derail you, so make sure you're able to pick yourself up when you fail and keep moving on. Story 1. Magical rubber duck. Turns whatever body of water it is in slowly into the perfect bath, as in warm and bubbly. Chucked it in a piranha pit. About 20 minutes later, the piranhas were all dead from poisoning via soap. Floaty rock. Rock that gains or loses buoyancy based on its temperature. As a warlock with prestidigitation and a rope, I could use it to hover and float very slowly. I had no way to steer, but it was useful when stuck in a pit or on a high place. Rat flute. Flute that summons a horde of rats like the Pied Piper. It can also be used to control any rat-like being, including a criminal known as the Rat, simply because he's a snitch. Had a lot of fun with that. Story 2. I gave my players a rock of gravity detection, which is exactly what it sounds like. They got it early on in the campaign, and when dropped, it would accelerate until reaching terminal velocity to the nearest center of gravity. So basically, it was a rock that would just act like a normal rock. Until way later in the campaign, they found themselves floating aimlessly through the astral plane, searching for the soul of another player trapped in a keep on a small chunk of land that had been previously transported to the astral plane. They didn't have much to go on, as they were essentially floating in a void. Then one of my players pulled out the rock of gravity detection. I tried to argue that it's just a rock, so it just floats there, but due to what I thought was clever wording, my own wording, they argued it should accelerate towards the nearest center of gravity. Yeah, they found the keep. Story 3. A wand of lesser summon. Only bringing out local creatures in celestial form. Fish. They picked fish. Just throwing trout in stacks to trigger traps and such. Need to slow down your pursuer? Many fish. Need a distraction? Fish as thrown objects. I told them that it can summon literally any local creature. But on every character sheet was the word fish gun. Story 4. I gave my players an amulet that lets them speak to rocks. The one player who picked it up spent most of that session talking to his new pet rock and would often interrogate rocks they find at scenes for information, usually getting either vague info or stuff they can clearly see already, because it's a rock. Later on, another party member wanted to try talking to another rock, Actually a pile of rocks made into a crude gravestone related to their character's backstory, only for the first party member to find out the amulet was cursed and they couldn't remove it. Later on, they got it removed and had the amulet identified, where I revealed that the amulet only let them think they could speak to rocks and all the information they had asked of rocks was only information that was already known to them. They basically started using the now uncursed version of the amulet as a tool to ask me for information they had forgotten or needed clarity on, but in character rather than just ask me out of character, which was great. Story 5. I homebrewed the hat of many hats. It's a regular hat, but it's made of shift weave, so it can have the appearance of any other hat. It was part of a shop selling dodgy knockoffs of regular magical items. In this case, the hat of disguise. The halfling who always struggled with role-playing took it, and it became a great way to get her more involved in what her character would do. It started when she transmuted herself in I'm with stupid baseball cap to tease one of the other party members after he had come up with some ridiculous plan, which led to one of the other players asking what this mysterious baseball was, and she just ran with it that it was a game they used to play back in her home region when they were kids. All of a sudden, she had a backstory, rather than just being, I'm short and I stab things. I'm sure she would have come into role-playing eventually, but it was like giving her a dressing-up box and seeing her realize that she could actually do things that weren't just purely mechanical. Story 6. Player, not Dungeon Master. I was given an article that only cast quicksand, which turned a certain volume of rock temporarily to quicksand. High-level characters, a bit of a gag gift. My halfling got it. A small army of orcs was approaching us. Narrow bridge. Dungeon Master expected a massive fight that was going to test our health points and empty magic items. Huge central portion of stone bridge turning into quicksand and dropping into the gulf below, totally cutting off the orcs. We strolled off at leisure. Also known as how to get the Dungeon Master to blink in silent confusion for 3 minutes as his game ended hours early. Story 7. Tweezers of boat bottling. You have gained the ability to put ships into bottles with these tweezers. People were sneaking into dockyards at night and stealing entire fleets. And when the Navy finally caught on, they would sail away and toss said shrunken boats in bottles at the Navy boats following them, causing them to rapidly expand. Then they started to plan bottle boatception, putting bottled boats onto full-sized boats and then bottling that boat. Over and over again, effectively creating a dozen boats to rapidly expand in one town by tossing one bottle. I had to shut that down quickly. Story 8. In our very first session, the fighter just really wanted to steal from the quest giver's house, so I gave her an ornamental dagger that was basically useless outside of selling it. 10 sessions later, they used it as a gift to bribe their way into a royal wedding. Story 9. I gave the party a tiny bag of holding made of human skin. I don't remember why. They were trapped in a house fighting a zombie horde and they used the skin bag, turned it into a sort of Molotov bomb, and used a spell to have it fly over the zombies who followed the human skin away to be blown up. It was a 45-minute saga to get to that point, and it was easily the funniest and most creative moment I've seen from the Dungeon Master side. Story 10. We had a rock that, if you were knocked out with it, made you completely invulnerable while unconscious. You had to successfully hit yourself or someone else and take damage from being knocked unconscious by a rock to the skull. That rock caused so much chaos, death, and life, and permanent head trauma to non-player characters we were trying to rescue. Story 11. A random encounter in the woods got the players a crow mask that makes it so you can only call like a crow when wearing it, based on a Slay the Spire item. Can be removed without issue, so it is a silly flavor item. However, the players are convinced it is the secret MacGuffin of this campaign and keep trying to use it for everything. Most times are failures, but a few times the stars align, and it somehow works. They used it to calm a weird mutated child down so that they could ask it questions to learn about an ambush. They used the spell Enlarge, along with the mask and a super high deception and performance roll, to convince a cult that the fighter was a stronger god than the one they were worshipping. They constantly use it to make every town guard think they are too much trouble to be worth hassling. Story 12. Gave the party a magic whistle that summons pigeons. The party somehow used it to murder an orc commander by turning his armor into bread, having the pigeons eat it all, and then shooting him in the face with a blast of lightning. Story 13. Healing Rock does 1 to 4 bludgeoning damage but heals 1 to 4 plus 1 health points. It was supposed to be a funny way to bring characters back from unconsciousness by restoring a small bit of health points. Barbarians resist bludgeoning damage when raging. The healing rock became their go-to healing strategy for keeping the barbarian healed between fights. Story 14. I gave them a folding boat. Say a magic word, and the small shoebox magically expands into a boat. Not 5 minutes later, in real life, the rogue has thrown this box from the roof and said the magic word, creating the only instance of 20 dice rolls I've ever had to do. I don't know the rules as written or the rules as intended if this is allowed, but throwing a boat at people is too fun not to allow it. Story 15. Maybe not exactly what you were looking for, but I've been looking for an excuse to tell this story. I had a party of a wizard, ranger, druid, summoner, and barbarian back in Pathfinder 1st Edition. All of the party members except for the barbarian had some kind of pet, be it an animal companion, familiar, or just the menagerie of animals the druid accumulated. A few sessions in, my barbarian sends me a text while the party is setting up camp. The barbarian volunteers to take a watch, and the next morning the rest of the party wakes up to the barbarian's new pet, Brock the Rock. Brock was a stone with eyes and a mouth crudely carved into him. Brock goes on adventures with the party and is mostly forgotten about until a premature fight with that arc's end boss. The boss wipes the floor with the party, leaving everyone unconscious except the barbarian who has single-digit hit points. Not wanting to have a total party kill, and with the boss in surprisingly worse shape than I expected, I have him taunt the barbarian and start to fly away. Brock is going to take his attack, the barbarian says, throwing his pet with all his might. Critical hit, max damage on the roll. The boss drops to -1 hit point and faceplants at the barbarian's feet for the coup de grace, also performed by Brock to finish what he started. And that's how our party's pet rock gained a temporary flight speed of 40 feet and favored enemy for both sorcerers. Story 16. One time our dungeon master gave us a rod of summon boat as a joke, except we rolled a natural 20 for the summon and got a whole galleon. The campaign quickly became pirate-themed as we became privateers. Story 17. We acquired a brick mold along with some other basic tools when we found a workshop in a dungeon. It was supposed to be just some set dressing, but I took it anyway. We later used it and several more we made from its design to reinforce a village that would soon come under attack. With everyone in the village making clay bricks for 2 weeks straight, we had enough to build a wall tall enough to make one of the ways into the town rather protected so we could focus the fighting on the other entrance where we could have more manpower at once. It saved a lot of lives since we weren't able to be flanked. Story 18. One of the players had gotten married to a pretty young non-player character who wasn't an adventurer. So I gave him a ring of conjugal visits that would transport him to his wife for an hour, then send him back to the adventuring group. The ring worked twice a week and was intended as a joke. When the party was beaten up from a hard combat, he used the ring and asked his wife where the nearest temple was, then bought healing potions from the local cleric. Soon this became a thing. Cure disease, healing, whatever. The ring became this guy's quick trip to the pharmacy, although he also always found a few moments for a quick moment with his wife. Eventually, he woke the cleric up at 3 a.m. to buy more potions. So I had the cleric throw a fit and yell at him never to come back. The player went back anyway, and the next time, there was a bouncer at the temple door telling him to get lost. Story 19. A gray bag, which was stuck on rats. They abused it so much in one session, I created a huge rat god that came and attacked the party. It wasn't that they were overusing the item, it was that they were using it poorly. At one point, they were pulling rats out and killing them in order to use their blood as dye. Story 20. The jar of endless lard. I put it in as a joke, and somehow they managed to set a forest on fire with a timed fuse. Also, having them cover various body parts in the lard just to set it on fire for extra damage wasn't good. Story 21. I gave my players a torch that couldn't be lit by normal means. After 2 or 3 sessions, one of them finally asked how to light it. I had totally forgotten about it by this point, so I made the non-player character mention that it could only be lit by an Elder Red Dragon's breath weapon, and once lit would burn forever. Suddenly, the entire party of 3rd and 4th level characters decides they want to veer off course and get this thing lit. Story 22. My party were camping in a barn and made friends with a goose. I allowed them to take the goose with them as a guard goose and emergency food. During their dungeon crawling, they found a gold bracer. The cuff was a soulbound item that would randomly cause whoever wore it to be possessed by a Lich King. The idea was that the next quest would involve removing it from the affected party member. After thorough inspection, the party discovered an evil aura surrounding the cuff, so they put it on the goose. The theory was that since the goose was chaotic neutral, it would balance out the evil of the bracer. Now they had a chaotic neutral guard goose that would randomly be possessed by a neutral evil lich, take on the appearance of a zombie goose, and cast random spells through a series of honks and hisses. Story 23. They got a vaguely sword-shaped branch of ash wood. That was it. This was in a planescape setting, so a few hours later the sorcerer persuaded an apologetic genie that the adjectives were unordered, so it was in fact a sword shaped like it was vaguely a branch of ash wood. To make amends for destroying part of the party's inventory, the genie remade the sword per the sorcerer's description while under a compulsion of truth. So was born Sylvan Blade. Story 24. I gave my players a chalice that, when drunk from, caused the user to sweat fat profusely. They used it to overcome a cold-based trap in the dungeon. It was a hallway that got progressively colder. So they emerged on the other end, covered in fat, into the chamber of the dungeon boss. It was a slippery fight. Story 25. My favorite magic item my players found was a completely homebrewed item with no real practical function, but they still got creative with it. They found the pie stone. Holding this stone in your hand and concentrating will fill a 25-foot radius area with the stone as the center with the smell of a pie of your choice. This effect lasts for 10 minutes or until you dismiss the effect. The rogue used it to sneak past guards and as a distraction tactic when scouting and such. Story 26. Not a dungeon master, but in the last campaign I was in, the dungeon master gave us a regenerative oasis that only appears to people who need it. The party was messing around, throwing bones in it and bringing the animals they belonged to back to life. One of the other players had the idea to throw the hat of the deceased king into the water, and brought the king back to life because of a single hair. The dungeon master hadn't even considered that possibility, because the session was supposed to be our beach episode. Story 27. Not mine, but the question reminded me of this post by a user named Nickoberg. I created a non-player character werewolf that was supposed to be a major villain in the campaign and stalk the players. It was a higher level than the player characters, so the idea was that they would need to flee every encounter and take measures to avoid being followed. Having someone on their tail constantly tracking them that could and would actually kill them was supposed to inject a sense of urgency into the game. On the first encounter, the werewolf was shown methodically slaying a large group of town guards and a high-ranking paladin. The characters were around level 5, the non-player character was probably challenge rating 12, and would scale as they leveled. They interrupted the combat, and the idea was that they would attempt to fight the werewolf, who didn't consider them a threat initially, and so wouldn't just murder the whole party, see it killing a high-level character, and go, "Oh no, we need to run from it," while it slaughtered the rest of the guards. At first, they rush in to help and attack the werewolf, doing little damage because they don't have silver weapons, and I gave this particular non-player character a regeneration ability only stopped by silver. I have the werewolf attack one of the players with a secondary bite attack, which should put them to fairly low health without killing them outright. That player pauses for a moment and then asks if he can try to block the attack with his hand. I'm not sure what he's getting at, but I humor him and say he can do that with a difficulty check 10 dexterity check, although it won't affect what kind of damage he takes. He succeeds. He then asks if he can jam his hand into the werewolf's mouth. I say sure, but he's probably going to bite it off and you'll need a new hand. He says, "Even better." I described the werewolf doing so. The rest of combat continues until the player's turn, who seems undisturbed by the loss of a hand, and on his turn he says, "I activate Quail's feather token to make a tree. This token is a magic one-time use item that creates a 5-foot diameter, 40-foot high tree. It's a handy utility item that our playgroup was fond of. Previously we'd used it to do things from just making bridges and crossing walls to providing a druid with a way to use a particular spell in plantless areas that require trees. It didn't seem to have much use here. I ask him where on the board he's activating it. He points at the werewolf. I say that the most that's going to do is knock the werewolf prone, and he gets a fairly easy save to prevent that. He smiles. No, it's in the werewolf. What? How? I was holding it when he ate my hand. Me and the rest of the party are kind of silent for a second. I'm trying to think of a valid reason why this won't work. I fail. The werewolf now has a 5-foot wide tree growing out of him. The fact that he has regeneration doesn't particularly help when little bits of him are plastered on walls 20 feet away. The entire party celebrated, and they got a reward from the town and an ally in the paladin who was supposed to be dead. I had to make a new non-player character. Clever players are awesome. Story 1. I own a house that sits smack in the middle of 3 cattle farms. The other night, I took my dog out to pee well after dark. There was a weird noise and a pair of glowing eyes at the end of my driveway. It was, of course, a cow. I called my neighbor to the north. He drove his utility task vehicle down, inspected the cow, didn't recognize it, and called my neighbor to the south. He sent his teenage son over in a car with no catalytic converter or muffler. He also didn't recognize the cow. Finally, my neighbor from the west was summoned on his all-terrain vehicle. It was his cow. The rest of us stood there drinking beer and watching the western neighbor drive his cow home with an all-terrain vehicle. Good times. Story 2. Driving home in a storm, a tree fell across the road in front of us. Mom and daughter. The truck behind us got their chainsaws out of their toolbox and moved that tree within 15 minutes. Also, there is not cell service everywhere. Only one service works consistently from my house. Story 3. Having your name and age listed in the local newspaper when you are pulled over for speeding, and your family and friends get to tease you for it because everyone loves to read the weekly police report. Story 4. There is no animal control out where I live, and no shelters within 100 miles that will take strays. If you dump your cat or dog, they will be eaten by a predator, starve to death, or be shot. Story 5. Country life is slower than your lifespan. In the city, you can go year after year seeing new buildings pop up, businesses, events, and so on. In country life, it's the same county fair every year, maybe a new building every 10 years, and a new business every 5 years. Story 6. Weather changes your life. I've sat on the porch with my parents watching hail destroy our wheat crop days before it was due for harvest. There's nothing you can do. You just watch. I've also stood in a circle with my parents and older brother in the yard while we prayed for rain. For farmers, weather is destiny. Story 7. You are probably on well water, which means that if the power goes out, you no longer have water. That also means that you get 1, maybe 2 flushes of the toilet, and I bet you are not a top priority for the electric company. Choose wisely, or get a generator. Story 8. I'm reminded of my time at the University of Iowa. A fellow I knew, graduate student age, but he wasn't actively attending, walked with a cane because of a gimpy leg. He'd broken it when he was a child, but he'd tell anyone who asked that he was mauled by a sow. He said the city people would just laugh it off as a joke. The country people would look at him in horror and say, "And you're still alive?" Story 9. Dogs. Dang it. People just driving out and dropping off unwanted dogs. Once, some coward dumped their mother dog and her 6 puppies near my front lawn. I hope there is a special place in hell for those people. Story 10. In the city, people ignore sirens and pay attention to gunshot sounds. In the countryside, people ignore the sound of gunfire and pay attention to the sound of sirens. Story 11. Rural Australia, living here, or water. The sky is inexplicably bigger. Don't drive at night if you can help it because you will hit a kangaroo. Stars like nothing you've ever seen. Leave town and you have no reception. What's a traffic light? Cook your own dinner or you aren't eating. Everyone and their mother owns a beat-up utility vehicle. The nearest hospital is 4 hours away, and the local airport is a literal shed in the bush. Story 12. I leave my doors unlocked when I'm away, so the neighbors can get in if they need something. I have a sleeping porch and I use it often. We walk through each other's property without rebuke. Nobody can hear me if I scream. Story 13. If you don't make dinner, you don't eat. No Uber Eats or Grubhub, no delivery pizza or takeout, unless you want gas station food. Most places nearby close by 5 p.m. on weekdays and have extremely limited hours or are closed entirely on weekends. Can be pretty darn peaceful. Story 14. Nature is brutal and so are animals. That eagle is so majestic in the city, but out here I am cursing its existence for attacking my chickens. Bears are so cute, but they are annoying when trying to get into the shed where we have to lock up our garbage cans. Deer are so beautiful, but they eat every leaf off a fruit tree sapling and kill it. Not to mention all the destruction they will do if your veggie garden fence isn't high enough. All that being said, I am still a huge advocate of wildlife and their protection. I'm just saying that out here we integrate back into the food chain, so to speak, whereas in the city you are removed from the inconveniences of being in it. Story 15. Sounds are not the scary part. Silence is. Edit. I had been walking with my younger sister and dog. I was 10, she was 8. Suddenly, the world went dead silent, and my dog froze, trying to huddle near the ground. Almost immediately, I had unclicked her leash. The dog went bounding home, and my sister and I went to the road. It was still utterly silent the whole time. Then my dad comes driving up with the dog and a rifle. We had only been about a mile away. As we're driving away, what's in the tree line? A mountain lion. Story 16. If I call 911, nobody will be here for at least 30 minutes for emergency medical services, 45 for fire, and an hour for police. And that's assuming they have nothing else to do and respond immediately. If the house is on fire, you call the neighbors. In less than 10 minutes, there will be a half-dozen tractors with water tanks and hoses. Lop your foot off? Call the neighbors. They'll drive you to the emergency room. Somebody means to do you harm? Shoot back or die waiting for the sheriff. Your choice. Story 17. A gas station serves about 10 functions. The rural gas station where I worked did the following: game room and arcade, gym and weightlifting, pool supplies and pool servicing, feed and seed, mini storage, custom guns, hunting and fishing supplies, batting cages. We also had a wine cellar that sold good wines and craft beer. Story 18. I know, I'm buried. You can never fully explain what it's like on quiet nights when there's no insects chirping. Like in winter. I live on the outskirts of a small town, a mile from the railroad tracks. Even though there was snow on the ground and in the trees, plus dozens of houses between me and the tracks, it sounded like I was standing next to the train at 3 in the morning. Load, load, load. Alternatively, you also never prepare someone for how soothing it feels on a summer night. Sitting on the porch, hearing the wind move softly through the trees, insects harmonizing their sweet tones, lightning bugs flittering about, blinking in a chaotic fashion. You just close your eyes, sip your drink, and experience almost total relaxation. Story 19. I grew up extremely rural and now live urban. You need a car. There is no walking anywhere. You go into town a few times a month if you don't work there. When I was growing up, my dad worked in a small town nearby and my mom worked in the village next to that. We didn't go to town, the city, but once a month to get groceries when dad got paid. If it isn't gotten then, you either get it at the gas station if you can afford the high price, or it isn't happening unless you drive the 30 miles to the city. We lived so rural there wasn't cable. We had satellite or over-the-air antenna. You are the last to get anything. Whether it's a new channel, a new road, cell phone service, internet access, you're the last to get it. My brothers still live in the old home place and there isn't cable. It's satellite or streaming, and the internet is still digital subscriber line. Most people who live there are families and know each other. About 50% of my classmates in school, our parents graduated together. One of my best friends was best friends with my mom in school. Everyone knows your business. I drove a vehicle that was outside the norm, yellow color, bright yellow. I used to get a text message every time I left my house asking where I was going from someone who saw me. Life is slow. I hear people complain in cities like Dallas and Phoenix there's nothing to do. Come to the rural areas, man. You make your own fun or it isn't had. Modern-day conveniences don't exist. There is no Uber, no Uber Eats, no pizza delivery. Your local restaurant closes around 7 or 8. and the gas station may serve food for a bit before closing. If you feel like pizza or Taco Bell or Sonic, you're going to drive at least 30 minutes to the city. There's no delivery or just walking up the street. Also includes emergency services. In my parish county, we fell under the sheriff, and it was common for there to be only 2 deputies patrolling at night. Need help? Sorry, both deputies are tied up right now. I'll try to find you someone from somewhere close by, but it may be a minute. Oh, and the emergency medical services or volunteer fire department have to be summoned from home. This is going to be a minute or 2 extra. Story 20. A lot of fake country folk overhype the woods. Anytime someone mentions a skinwalker, that's your red flag. I live in the woods. Yes, the woods can be scary, but it's far from paranormal. The woods are a fine place to explore and gain an appreciation for real, tangible nature. Don't let the boogeyman scare you away from the biodiversity native to your area. Buy a field guide so you can get out and learn something. Story 21. The little wave you give when passing a vehicle going the opposite direction on a country road. Bonus points if you're cool enough to just raise your first 2 fingers off the steering wheel. Also, saying hello to a stranger on a hiking trail, or at least giving a little nod and smile. I can always tell someone isn't from here when I say hello on a hike and they look at me like I'm an alien. Story 22. No sidewalk? Walk against traffic. We learned this as kids. We live in the suburbs now, but my husband also grew up in the same rural area where this was drilled into our heads. It blows my mind to see adults walk with traffic in the suburbs where there are no sidewalks. I always want to scream at them, against the traffic so you can see. It's for your own good. For those not in the know, walking against the traffic puts you in a better position to see and avoid hazardous vehicles. Walking with your back to traffic coming behind you is not a great vantage point, especially in 2024 when most pedestrians have earphones in. I also find myself doing it in parking lots and even if there is a sidewalk. At this point in my life, 53-year-old female, it's ingrained. Story 23. I'm a rancher, and thanks to Starlink, I am an avid personal computer gamer. So yeah, life is different but also the same in some ways. We're 4.5 hours to the nearest city with a population larger than 10,000. And a city of 10,000 is 2.5 hours away. Work is certainly a bit different. I spend far more time on a horse than in a vehicle most of the summer months. But after working all day, I like to relax and game like the rest of you. Story 24. You cannot buy a rural property inexpensively and then have big city expectations about the condition of your neighbors' properties or their behavior. Welcome to a rural area. Sometimes old washers are in the front yard, and people park their 18-wheeler trucks in front of their house and noisily warm them up every morning at 4 a.m. Story 25. The mosquitoes. The thousands and thousands of inescapable mosquitoes, and the sheer size they are. They literally crunch when you kill them. I moved 4 states away into a city, so now I don't hear that buzzing noise anymore. I just hear gunshots every night, which is way more preferable. Story 26. I'm the city girl who moved to the country. Everybody from here sees deer as a nuisance or as dinner. 6 years in, my naive self still thinks they're magical. Story 27. My wife used to make fun of me when we first got married for saying I was going to town anytime I needed to go to the grocery store or Home Depot or something. This was understandable given that we lived in the middle of a mid-sized city. It was just a habit from living in the rural areas my whole life. My revenge, I moved her to BFE Appalachia. Now she has to go to town every day. Story 28. 1. You are going to see a lost or abandoned baby rabbit, bird fledgling, or fawn at some point, and it is 98% likely that they do not need your help. The best thing you can do is to walk away. You can free-range your chickens or other fowl, but you are going to lose some to predators. No, you are not allowed to shoot the hawks. If you do not like it, keep your birds in a large run. The deer, bear, foxes, and other fluffy animals are not your friends. They are wild. They can and often will hurt you if you get too familiar. You still need to fence your dog or keep it on a leash or a lead. If your dog attacks someone's livestock, pets, neighbors, or their children, or otherwise acts aggressive, your dog will likely be shot, and the law will be on your neighbor's side. It does not matter if that aggression was actually an attempt to play. No, you are not allowed to jump someone's fence to pet their cows, horses, or other animals. Also, those animals may kill or wound you because you are a stranger. Just because you cannot see anyone actively living in an area does not mean you can dump your trash there, hunt there, or otherwise act like you own the property. Story 29. What real quiet is like and what real dark is like. I've spent time in the city and time in the middle of nowhere and felt my mental health improve and stress levels drop. There's nothing like lying in a hammock in a cool breeze when the nearest human is at least a quarter mile away. Story 30. See that driveway, someone has to plow it. You manage your own water, sewage, and waste. No, that doesn't go down the drain. Yes, the water is treated and drinkable. You have a generator because when power goes down, it stays down for days at a time. You have a pantry because running out of rice or salt is an hour or more drive away. You fix your own things because getting an electrician, plumber, or carpenter is difficult. You drive a vehicle with enough clearance because you need it. That guy cutting hay on most of the land has been doing it since before you were born. He chooses when and what time. That time is 6 a.m. Your city truck is a joke out here. Story 31. That time of year when the entire village will smell like manure, wafting in gently from all the fields, as opposed to the usual smell of manure from all the horses coming through the village on a regular basis. Story 32. The absolute peace there is. No sirens, no personal soundtracks blaring, no traffic noise, cleaner air, darker nights with less streetlights, more wildlife in nature. I've lived in New York City before and wouldn't trade this for the best apartment back there. Story 33. The value of peace and quiet. Meditation and yoga classes do not count. I mean, sitting on your back porch with nothing but the sounds of birds chirping. It makes you feel alive more than anything else. Story 1. Even if the object isn't that heavy, if my arms can't wrap comfortably around to hold it, I can't carry it. The overhead visor isn't going to do anything against the sun. Story 2. Most short people cannot sit with their back against the back of a chair or sofa and have their feet touch the floor. Without a pillow behind them, it gets uncomfortable quickly. A lot of guys make fun of all the decorative pillows, but they also serve a function. Story 3. Normal chairs are too tall for me. I can only touch the floor with my tiptoes. So, I often just sit on the edge of my seat, but I always have to make sure my chair isn't in the way, like in restaurants and office meetings. On the plus side, I can wear children's socks and shoes, which are less expensive and come in more fun designs. Story 4. I have strong calves because I go up on tiptoes 20 times a day. Working on kitchen counters or regular sinks can be really straining. That annoying tip of the fingers making the thing turn around instead of being able to grab it off an upper shelf. Climbing up things to get things. Story 5. What it is like to go to the grocery store and have the item you need be on the very top shelf. You have to either swallow your pride and social anxiety and ask for help or go home without it. Story 6. The world is not designed for short people. As mentioned in other comments, items on higher shelves aren't easy to reach, and dangling feet when sitting on a toilet or in a chair is frustrating. Consider my own 4-foot 10-inch pet peeve. The average countertop height should reach the average person around mid-hip or thereabouts. This allows for hands to be in an ideal ergonomic position to do whatever. But for us short people, the countertop height trends upward to somewhere around torso level, making doing things at counter height just miserable. I hate cooking, doing dishes, etc., simply because after a little while my neck, shoulders, and back ache from extending my arms up and out rather than out and down like everyone else. I imagine taller than average folks have similar issues with needing to stoop down to reach the counter. Story 7. People treat you like you're less of a person. Like hell, I'm 38, I've been through a lot of difficulties. Just because I'm 4 feet 11 inches doesn't mean I'm not worthy of respect. Damn it. Story 8. As a shorter guy, 5 feet 5 inches male, you can literally be invisible in a group. At parties or gatherings, I have often had experiences where taller people will introduce themselves to each other and simply not notice me. I have learned to be more assertive, but it's annoying as heck when it happens all the time. Story 9. How awesome it is to be able to pull the covers up to your chin without having your feet sticking out from under the duvet, even when you're lying stretched out on the bed. Story 10:1. My eye level is not your eye level. I can't see the hood of most cars while driving. Bonus. I've had to get really good at asking tall supermarket strangers for help. Alternatively, my skill set also includes scaling shelves like a 5-foot spider monkey. Story 11. How it's often the first insult thrown. A good example at the moment is the number of people criticizing Rishi Sunak's height in the United Kingdom. His height is irrelevant, whatever you think. Story 12. If you walk normally, I have to basically power walk. Even if you tell them, either they don't seem to understand, can't adapt on short notice, or don't care. Story 13. Being constantly aware of where people are. Short people need to watch for stray elbows, careless individuals walking backward, intoxicated individuals walking forward, and how to get the attention of someone who is oblivious to your existence. Story 14. I am a 43-year-old adult who has been working in my career for 20 years. I am a grown-up. Just because I'm the height of the average 12-year-old and also have a baby face and also just happen to be traditionally attractive does not mean that I am not a serious adult. This has been my biggest pet peeve since I was in my 20s, where at my first job out of college everyone assumed I was not a college intern, but someone who somehow was in high school yet coming to an office job from 8 to 5 every day. Just because we're short doesn't mean we're actually children. For the love of God, I am begging all of you to please remember this whenever you deal with a professional adult who just doesn't happen to be as tall as most adults. Story 15. When you place things on the top shelf, I can't reach it. It's possible I can't even see it. And if I ask you for assistance getting it, I'm not pretending to be helpless for no reason. Help, or accept that you having to crouch slightly to put it away is less of a burden than me being totally unable to access it. Tall people also overlook shorter people all the time and will push us out of the way as if we aren't even there. Story 16. Tall people do not have the same innate climbing abilities as a shorter person. Climbing is a sport for tall people. It is like getting something off the top shelf for us. My daughter calls it dad gymnastics. Story 17. People don't take you seriously because they think you're young. I'm a 5-foot, 30-year-old with 2 kids. The mothers give me dirty looks when I go to the store with my kids, probably thinking I'm a teenage mom or something. Story 18. Body aches from using furniture that is not designed for your height. My feet do not reach the floor when I am in an office chair, so it causes lower back pain. The armrests are often too wide for my frame, so my elbows have to stick out, straining my shoulders. Story 19. Please don't seat me in a booth. I feel like I need a booster when the table is level with my chest. Also, forget those tall tables with high stools. I have to actually climb up and down. Just a regular table with regular chairs that let my toes graze the ground is fine enough. Thank you. Story 20. My space matters too. I also like to be comfortable. I don't appreciate being squeezed into the smallest space all the time because it's easier. I don't want the terrible seat, bed, etc. every time we travel. Being told constantly that you just need to roll with whatever because your comfort matters least honestly had an effect on me. Story 21. Recently for me, despite there being a setting for adjusting exercise equipment to fit from tall to short, I am at that level of shortness where even the shortest or smallest setting is not small enough in most equipment. Also, every pair of pants I buy needs to be hemmed up. Story 22. Well-meaning people will often say, especially to men, things like, "Oh, nobody really cares about how tall you are." Tall people, yes, you do. You absolutely 100% do. You don't have to have must be over 6 feet on your dating profile to care. We've been out here the whole time. It's every single day. Yes, you absolutely do care. And that's fine. We all have preferences and biases and all that. Totally not a character flaw on your part. But pretending it's not an issue is absolutely maddening. Or pretending that short men's sensitivity about it is all in their head. It really isn't. Just accept that it's a thing that sucks and go about your business. No need to add a lie to it. Story 23. My feet never touch the ground, and hanging like that makes my knees hurt. So, I will tuck a leg up under me, put my feet on a bar of the chair next to me or on my desk, Anything to avoid just dangling all of the time. Story 24. It makes me feel unsafe if you talk about how easily you can pick me up and take me, or how easily someone could overpower me. Why would you tell me that when I'm already afraid of it happening? Story 25. I can see inside your nose. Get rid of your boogers. When you talk, your breath is right in my face. Please practice good mouth hygiene. For guys, when you absent-mindedly fix your private parts, you're practically shaking yourself in my face. I know it's you when you fart because I'm closer to your rear than you think. I may be the size of a child to you, but that doesn't mean you can just grab me and pick me up. Put me down, you fool. Story 26. Carrying pretty much anything in bags or under arms is heavier because our arms are shorter. The bags or whatever we are carrying would probably drag on the floor if we left our arms hanging at full length. So we have to bend them up and sustain that muscle contracted all the way home. Tall people can just grab a bag and let their arms relax. Story 27. Here is a short list of lifelong inconveniences while living as a 4'11" woman. All pants must be hemmed, even petite sizes. The same goes for long skirts and dresses. I realized way too late in life that the kids section for clothing and shoes is not only economical for me, but the fit is better too. I need a step stool to reach the second and third shelf in all my cabinets. Every room in my house has at least one chair for me to get on to reach things up high. I have to do a running jump to get into my truck. When I drive, the seat has to be all the way forward and all the way up so I can see over the dashboard. Talking to people is literally a pain in the neck. I have never been able to look anyone in the eye unless we are both sitting down. Echoing what others have said about calorie intake. If I eat over 1,500 calories, I gain weight. 5 pounds of weight gain looks like 20 on me. If I weigh more than 105 pounds, I look like an Oompa Loompa. My 4-year-old is now 1 foot shorter than me. I will have to stop carrying her soon because carrying someone as tall as me down the stairs doesn't seem like a safe or smart idea. My feet dangle when I sit to pee, which feels weird. A squatty potty for the win. I could literally write a book of lamentations of a short woman, but those are just some of the greatest hits one could think of at the moment. Story 28. It is almost impossible to order anything from the bar if it is too high and no one can see you or hear you. My God. This is why I prefer places where you are being served. At least I can get my drink. Story 29. Don't stand so close to me. Specifically in line, when a tall man stands behind me too closely, I get the icks. Just because we're not right in front of your line of sight doesn't mean we're not there. Story 30. There is a real, true bias against short people. Judging people on race, gender, sexual preference, or religion is extremely taboo. But saying, I only date guys over 6'6" on a dating profile is perfectly acceptable. Men will pick fights with you because they can see the top of your head. Taller people are often respected more in office settings. And don't even get me started on the short-phobic National Basketball Association. Story 31. If a short person does something really impressive, it's automatically called short man syndrome, Napoleon complex, or compensating for a small penis. If a tall man does the same thing, it's just humbly impressive. It annoys me. Story 32. I don't know if this is a short person thing, but my dad is a little tall, and he would always ruffle my hair when I was a kid. I hated it and clearly showed that I hated it and would always tell him don't. But he just kept doing it anyway. I feel like if I was tall, he wouldn't have done that to me. He also kept calling me small all the time. It was bad enough that he did that when I was like 5 years old because back then I really was small, but the older I got, the more annoying it was to still get called that. I'm an adult in my 30s, and he still calls me that once in a while, and boy, it pisses me off. I've told him several times to knock it off with calling me that because that was old when I was a kid. He claims it's affection, but I always hated it. He keeps forgetting that we talked about it and will start doing it again. I hate it so much because it feels like he's calling me inferior or something to that effect, so it's insulting to me. Again, I know he wouldn't be doing that if I was taller. Too long. Didn't read. When tall people do things like ruffle someone's hair or call them some variation of the word small, they think it's cute or funny to do that to someone shorter than them, but to us short people, it's very annoying. Even if they don't mean it that way, it feels insulting because it's like they're calling us inferior in some way. It just pisses me off. Story 33. The tops of all my picture frames and shelves are very dusty. We are horrified when we get on a chair and realize you have been seeing our dirty house we had no idea about. Story 34. The lengths of extra small size clothing often fit me, but they are often too tight because they are made for very skinny people. The width of small-sized clothing fits me most of the time, but the length is often too long. I should just shop at petite clothing stores, but there are not many of those around me, and some do not have the styles I want. I have discovered that some stores like Abercrombie and Fitch have the same size pants with different lengths: short, regular, and long. Lifesaver. Story 35. The funny thing is super tall people and I often do better together because they get the height issues. It's the average height people that are often the ones that don't understand all the comments in here, in my experience. Story 36. Sun visors in cars only work for tall people. Shorter individuals are blinded by the light daily while driving. My ADHD brain. Hey Siri, play Blinded by the Light by Bruce Springsteen. Story 37. You all tall women need to stop hovering over toilets and making them wet and gross. Short women cannot hover to pee, and we should not have to. If no one hovered, this would not be an issue. Story 38. Just because I am short does not mean you have to remind me. And yes, I can reach things without help. Do not act surprised like, oh my gosh, I did not think you could reach it. Comparing height gets annoying. I am 5 feet 0 inches tall. Story 39. I was never insecure about my height. It has never stopped me from dating people taller than me. Tall people have this thing where they love to comment on how short you are. Story 40. The dread that shoots through your body when a fire alarm goes off. Even with a ladder, I have to stretch and hope I am close enough to pull the base down so I can change the battery and then screw it back in. High ceilings are my nightmare. Story 41. Not being able to get things at grocery stores. There are some products that are always on the top shelves and I either have to climb the shelves like Spider-Man, not recommended, or wait for a taller person to come by and get it for me. Also, any kind of group gathering, parade, or concert where everyone has their iPads or phones raised to film ensures that I can never see anything. That's why I mostly stay home. Story 42. That standing up for yourself doesn't mean the same thing for short people like me. I have a friend who is 6 feet 4 inches tall, and if he has ever gotten into an altercation, he stands up, and the person usually backs down and runs away. This has worked for him in serious situations like someone breaking into his office, and non-serious situations like someone talking trash at him in public. Height intimidates a lot of people. When you're shorter than most people, like me, unfortunately standing up, literally, for yourself doesn't work as much. Story 1. I had to defend my thesis over Zoom, and many professors joined the call to watch. My thesis was about immune response in fish to parasites. One professor joined late and forgot to mute her microphone, and we got treated to this little gem. Shoo. Mommy is learning about fish parasites, which is what you'll get if you don't stop peeing in the koi pond. Edit. Thanks for the acknowledgement. That's my first recognition. Story 2. Not really anything super weird. I was in a meeting with my class for the first day of school, and I had forgotten to mute myself. I then proceeded to start noisily baby talking to my cat, who was in my lap at the time. Embarrassing. Story 3. A girl's mom. Who are you on the computer for this early in the morning? And asking the same thing over and over. Teacher. I think your microphone is on. Story 4. English Zoom call. The teacher was holding us for more than 15 minutes after the period had ended. She said something like, "Keep working hard." And I responded with, "If she says, hard one more time, I'm going to flip a table." I was not on mute. Story 5. When I was doing an online algebra camp, the teacher forgot to turn off his microphone while we were supposed to be doing some problems. He said, "I really hate math." Story 6. This is from a couple of years ago. I was working for a private college that has several campuses. My campus was the online campus. Each year, the campuses took turns hosting an annual writing conference for English and speech faculty. With it being the online campus's turn to host, We came up with the idea to make it a virtual conference, which faculty members could attend from home or go to their own campus and attend with their peers in a classroom. Anyway, as one of the people on the conference committee, my job was to host several of the various breakout sessions, make sure the WebEx meeting was working, introduce the presenter of the session, monitor the question and answer, and so on. I also made sure to mute the participants once it was time for the speaker to start. There was no live microphone scenario, but one of the participants left his webcam on. During the presentation, he pulled out a gigantic party sub and was just going to town on it. So while everyone was watching the presenter's PowerPoint, you just saw this guy, who I had met before and was a legit 6 feet 8 inches, scarfing down a party sub in a window at the bottom of the screen. Honestly, it was more impressive than anything. Story 7. So I have one. I just did 8-hour Zoom calls for 7 weeks training for a new project. On the second week, a man unmutes his call, farts the longest fart I've ever heard in my life, then when he finishes, mutes the call. I can see others laughing while muted at his fatal error of thinking he wasn't muted, and so he went to mute his call. I found this to be the highlight of the week, but the following week, the guy does it again. Honestly, the second time I laughed, but then started to wonder if it was some kind of power move. Story 8. In a math class I was in last year, we were taking a test which you have to turn your microphone on for their way of trying to prevent cheating. Some girl apparently forgot that hers was on and started belting out, "Stand By You," by Rachel Platten at the top of her lungs. It went on for the entire song, and she was still humming it when I finished the test and left the call. Story 9. I teach for an online university that requires me to conduct a weekly live session. One morning, I was lecturing, and a student popped in late. I said, "Hello, student name. Thanks for joining us." She said, "Don't say my name," just before she realized her microphone was on and turned it off. I just laughed. Story 10. I was producing a video for some university professors on a specific medical topic for a virtual learning course. I was all set up to shoot the process, and the teachers excused themselves to the next office to regroup and have a chat. I already had their wireless lavalier microphones attached and fed to my camera, so when I sat down at the camera and put on my headphones, I immediately heard their conversation. They were criticizing me, saying they couldn't believe they hired someone so young, inexperienced in that particular medical field, how I looked, how I asked questions, and so on. Oops. At least I made them a fine video. These days, I don't put my headphones on until we're about to shoot. Story 11. Last week, a kid in my brother's class forgot his camera was on during the first class and was smoking a giant gas mask bong during the syllabus review. Story 12. Ironically, my information technology teacher forgot to turn off his microphone and camera and proceeded to get into a very heated argument on the phone with his ex-girlfriend, with whom he has a child. Did I mention that she is also a teacher at our school? Yeah, most awkward 5 minutes of my life before he realized. Story 13. During my English class, this one girl forgot to mute herself. While my teacher was talking, she almost deafened all of us on the Zoom call answering her mother's questions. Her mother, from a distance, asked, "What class are you in?" She yelled, "English." Her mother replied, "Oh, the hot teacher?" She said, "Yeah, that guy." Now, even I'll admit my teacher is fairly attractive, but it does take it to another level when you get your own mother involved. Thankfully, our teacher is a chill guy and thought the whole thing was just kind of funny, and gave a general reminder to the class to keep mics muted. She didn't say anything for the rest of the class. Story 14. In a thermodynamics class, one of the students said, "Holy smokes, this is so much," after covering a large set of equations related to fugacity. Everyone found it relatable. Story 15. A student in my class forgot to turn off their microphone, and we heard some background noises like doors closing and tapping. Due to a display bug, we couldn't see where the noise was coming from. Then the student started saying negative things about the teacher, commenting on how the lesson was useless and how they could do the same thing on a tablet. Everyone heard that, and the teacher heard the insults. The student didn't return to the classes after that. Story 16. I was in training before classes started this year. Around 200 teachers were present. Only the principal and assistant principal were speaking. A teacher had her microphone unmuted. Her phone rang. She picked it up and said, "Hey, yeah, just sitting here in another one of these goddamn trainings." Story 17. I'm a college student. Last semester, we had a girl place an entire dinner order over the phone with her microphone on while we all tried to tell her that her microphone was on. I think she had us muted. She was ordering Mediterranean food. I think she got a chicken gyro. Edit. Thanks for the upvotes. I feel like I ought to mention she was also yelling across the house to ask her mom what she wanted from wherever they were ordering. Sadly, we didn't get to hear the mom's order. Story 18. Somebody in my class forgot to turn off the microphone and started singing along loudly to a song. Somebody told her, and there was this odd whoop noise, and then she cut off. Story 19. I am not a student, but work in the technology industry. I have been in meetings where people forget to mute themselves on large company calls with hundreds or thousands of attendees, and we will hear a fart and then a toilet flush. That is about as interesting as these meetings get, though. Story 20. I had a student's boyfriend, both in college, walk up behind her on Zoom, reach into her shirt, pull out her breasts, and start doing a little dance. She was just laughing and playfully slapping his hands away. This was probably 30 seconds after I had just gone through my whole speech about making sure there was nothing in your browser history, Google search history, or names of folders that could be embarrassing or offensive. Story 21. College student here. This was last semester when we had first switched to all online classes. I had an 8 a.m. class on Renaissance through modern art history. Anyway, a kid in the class didn't have his microphone muted, and he was snoring. Like really snoring. My poor professor tried to wake him up but couldn't. She also had no idea how to mute him or remove him, so we went on with the lecture. After about 5 minutes, she finally said, "I can't teach to this," and ended the Zoom meeting. For the rest of the semester, we used VoiceThread instead. Story 22. Not a Zoom, but when I was a flight attendant, we used handheld microphones to give briefings and make announcements. One female passenger got in my friend's face and screamed at her that if her bags were lost or if her golf bag was damaged, she would make sure to hold her personally responsible. My friend was pretty shaken not only by the loudness and anger but by the woman's spittle and tried to hold it together to give her departure briefing. Welcome aboard Flight 123, service to Orlando. You awful person. The entire plane lost it. My friend had forgotten to let go of the key on the side of the microphone, so all noise was picked up. Story 23. A boy accidentally forgot to turn his microphone off, and we heard how his mom verbally abused him. He then looked at the camera, realized the microphone was on, and turned the camera and mic off. The next day, he looked like he had cried all day, and his mom was behind the camera. I still feel bad for that kid. To the random Redditor who gave me the silver award, I swear the situation will not be kept secret. I will do as much as I can to help. Guess what? My whole class was telling and spamming the principal to do something about the kid. In the end, the principal, along with the counselor, had a long talk with the mother and threatened that if she didn't change, they would call the police. She was scared and decided to change because his dad loves him. The last day I saw him, he was happy and like he was on the first day again. Though I couldn't speak to him, it's clear that at least something changed and his father is on his side. To all of you who supported the situation, thanks for giving advice on what to do. Story 24. My son calls his tablet his fix because when I first got it and the battery would die, I would tell him I was going to fix it. So imagine his pre-kindergarten teacher's surprise last spring when he asked me if he could have his fix now that he was done with school. I laughed, held up the tablet in question, and explained what he meant. Story 25. This was work, not school, but someone posted a drawing of a Hello Kitty type character on the side of their presentation during a virtual meeting. One of my coworkers mumbled, "Damn, fat ass." Which, when I looked again, yeah, the character had a pear body shape. It was such a weird thing for someone to say, though my brain just dismissed it as me mishearing it until they panicked a second later and apologized for not being on mute, and then I fully processed it. Additional context. The coworker is a 50-plus mother of 3. Story 26. It isn't too bad, but during the graduating ceremony for a class, all staff were asked to attend and turn on their microphones to clap at certain points so it wouldn't be awkward. One such staff member forgot to turn their microphone back off and was heard loudly jokingly insulting her husband and asking for another drink while complaining about how long and boring this was. This was broadcast to the whole class, their parents, and anyone else listening. We stuck together and didn't tell anyone who it was. But we all knew. Mute your microphones. Edit. Changed berating to more what it actually was. Maybe I used the word wrong. But we're in the United Kingdom and that's how we show love. I heard what she was saying, guys. It wasn't abuse. Story 27. One time in an art class, separate from my school, my dad knocked on my door. It was silent at that point. Everyone was working on their projects. I clicked the mute button and yelled, "What?" Turned out my microphone was already muted, and I turned it on. I startled the entire class, and the teacher asked if I was okay. Edit. I know everyone hates these, but what in the world? I was not expecting this to happen, and I got my first award. Thank you. Story 28. Not virtual, but a few years back my roommate was in a chemistry lecture, and the professor excused himself and left the room but left the wireless microphone on. He proceeded to fart and came back into the lecture hall to see all his students dying of laughter. Story 29. So we were making our classes as phone calls on an app called TeamSpeak, I think. Anyways, I was using my phone to talk and my computer to work and sometimes check Discord. At a point, we were supposed to do some exercises on our own, and I left my mic on. My friend sent me a message talking about the fact that he got a girlfriend. So I sent him, "You did it, you crazy son of a bitch." Then I wanted to add some emoji, so I tried to edit the message and I hit the text-to-speech button instead. The computer literally yelled, "You crazy son of a bitch." Story 30. I was visiting my best friend during a lecture, and she had her microphone and video turned off. She then had to join a group discussion and sometimes unmuted herself to contribute. After that, the whole class was supposed to present their results, and she supposedly muted herself again. I started venting to her about how wasps are considered wild bees, even though they have no business being bees because they're troublemakers, and suddenly we heard laughter from her professor and classmates. She forgot to mute herself. Story 31. I know it isn't close to answering the question, but I have to share this. We recently had a meeting with our whole team where the host forgot to turn off screen sharing, so we all saw him respond positively to a job offer. Funniest thing I've ever seen. Or it would be if the offer hadn't included the salary, letting us all know that this grossly incompetent worker was getting paid way more than the rest of us. Still, we were just glad to see him go. Story 32. This was a conference call for work, but it was a big call with about 12 people. Since I am new, I was mostly just listening as the senior analysts were discussing something. The call was going on for a while, so I took my laptop into the bathroom with me. I flushed the toilet, and everyone just stopped talking. It turns out I didn't mute my microphone, and everyone heard a toilet flushing in the middle of the meeting. Luckily, no one cared, and they all laughed about it, but I was mortified. Story 33. While giving a lecture on the heated arguments among different schools of psychology, our professor screamed, "Fire! Fire! There's fire!" And most of the confused students, including the teacher's pets, replied, "I agree. Those were some good points." Things turned out funnier and scarier when the professor continued screaming, and we could hear her calling her house help and brother, alarming them of a fire sparking up her switchboard. So, a confused, concerned class of 50 sat through the entire episode of putting out the fire while our professor revealed every dynamic of her family through her panicked screams. 30 minutes later, she came back to her laptop to unmute herself only to find 100 "Are you okay?" texts in the chat box. Edit. Thanks for making this new Reddit user's day with that award. Story 1. University teacher here. My students put in way more effort than I did at their age. Granted, the system has pushed them in that direction as well, but they typically have a better idea of where they want their career to go and are willing to put in the effort to obtain that goal. By comparison, I and my cohort mucked about a bit more. Story 2. Students are not afraid to just be nice to each other. I teach elementary art, and it is so nice when a child who is pretty unskilled in art shows another child their work, and instead of getting laughed at, kids are just so sweet and will say things like, Wow, I really love that. I hear kids telling other kids, I think your work is beautiful, or I really like your ideas. And I just think of when I was in art class and kids made fun of my work. In general, I really don't see kids being bullies as much as they were when I was a kid. I went to school in a really nice district too with few problems, but I was bullied. Kids here have a much worse home life than kids at my old school, and while they could choose to take it out on others, they don't. Kids help each other too. They know if a student is special and will try to help that student out. They'll offer to walk them to the bathroom, help them with their drawing, or very politely tell them to be careful with things. Story 3. My girlfriend is a teacher, and she is amazed at how uncool drinking and driving is. Kids are like, that's stupid, you will kill someone. They literally make fun of kids who do it. In my day, everyone drove drunk. Very positive change. For the thousands of people saying my username doesn't check out, I am going to have to ask you to do something risky and search hard gay man. If you don't want to do it, you're missing out. People who have hard gay in their lives are better for it. Story 4. They seem generally kinder to each other, especially to the kids who are different. When I was in school, the kids who did not speak English as their first language, or were a little quirky or had disabilities were either avoided or viciously bullied. Today, that seems to be the exception rather than the norm. Story 5. Not a teacher but work the 2 to 10 shift at the local gas station across from the junior high and high school. Kids these days are a lot nicer, more likely to donate to our fundraisers, and they have zero problem paying for each other's stuff when someone's short. Story 6. I worried about my son, who has mild autism, for the first 10 years of his life. I kept telling him that middle school would be hard, kids would tease him, and that high school would be even harder in the same respect. 15 years ago, I would have been right. Fast forward to now, and I am constantly amazed and grateful for how well he is treated. Even the jock kids and big snotty idiot kids who would make perfect bullies are inclusive, kind, and even sometimes protective of my son. I've told all of them how appreciative I am, and even got a few of them Christmas presents this year. Love those kids. Edit. A few people are doing the math. My son is 11 and I am 30. He is not in high school yet, but he will be there with the same kids he is in middle school with, so I feel confident about it. Story 7. Girls ask boys out more often. Boys are starting to expect girls to be more frank and straightforward with what they want more often. Other than that, just like my colleagues. Generally kinder, more generous, understanding of differences, mature. On the other hand, I find them generally more sad, maybe more cynical, and overall quite happily pessimistic toward the future, a kind of, aha, we're so messed up vibe I feel sometimes. I have to say that I teach in France, which is important to note. Story 8. I'm not a teacher, but my girlfriend's mom is a teacher, and it sparked a dialogue. With the dawn of meme culture, kids are getting competitive with comedy at an early age. When I was a kid, I had undiagnosed mental health issues, so I was bullied a lot. The only thing that kept me alive was developing my sense of humor. Sad as it is, young people have a pecking order and cliques, but a few things can transcend those boundaries, and one of those is humor. Coincidentally, I was into internet humor, meme culture, and personal computer games way before my peers were. Want to hear something crazy? I was bullied for that specifically and mercilessly. If you ran a meme page and had a nice gaming personal computer at 10 today, you would be a god. It's honestly made a lot of kids that don't fit in have at least something in common with their peers. All you have to do is yell Fortnite or whatever meme is going around that week, and boom, you have a friend. I had one time when I was able to make friends like that, and that was when Pokemon came out, similar concept. You might think that kind of stuff is cringe or annoying or stupid, but if it can prevent someone from wanting to harm themselves at 12 like I was, I'll allow it. Of course, I don't need to have it anywhere near me, but that's a different matter. Story 9. They are generally independent and self-reflective. When I first started teaching, I thought I had simply been lucky in getting students who were consistently bright, engaged, and curious. However, having now taught at 3 different universities on 2 different continents, it seems to be a general trend across universities. They are also, as noted elsewhere, generally kind and empathetic, and both my male and female students are usually quite emotionally mature. Story 10. I asked my wife, who is a primary teacher, And she says empathy and adaptability are the two traits she has seen dramatically improve over her last 15 years. Kids seem to be better at putting themselves in another's position and understanding their situation. Also, they seem to be much more flexible with changes, whether in the classroom or the outside world. Story 11. Spouse to a high school teacher, she had to say, they were born into the internet and social media, so it is not something they had to learn. As a result, they are also more self-reliant with research. Most importantly, contrary to the largest complaints, today's kids are extremely hardworking and are less judgmental of nerds, less judgmental in general. Story 12. As a student currently in high school, the big thing for our generation, at least in decent schools, is that failure isn't cool. Sure, if you suck up to the teacher and obsess over studying, you'll get made fun of a bit, but the kids getting FS get made fun of a lot more. A lot of the popular kids are actually really smart and get top grades. There's a general awareness that we all need to do well and a lot of aspiration for the future. Story 13. Kids are openly kind and loving regarding their parents. I had a tough football player say in class once, "I love my mom. She's my best friend. I see the old, ugh, my parents suck mentality falling by the wayside recently." Story 14. I teach junior high. Celebrity status of athletes is over. They are just one more social group on campus. Smart kids have more respect from their peers. Excellence in multiple disciplines seems to be more valued than ever. Story 15. I am a teacher at a high school in Missouri. All of the stereotypes you hear and see in rural high schools are still prevalent. However, almost every group works harder academically. It is no longer cool to get Fs and fail. Even country boys who will never leave the farm or go to college care about getting passing grades. There are over 600 students in our high school, by the way. Story 16. They really get each other. As much as they criticize each other, joke around, and, yes, get to the point of blows, they can usually put issues aside. Sometimes to a fault, but overall they are pretty understanding of each other. Story 17. Not a teacher, but a former after-school care counselor. Even though it may have just been the school's rules or conditioning, the kids were generally so good at apologizing, owning up to their actions, and being accepting of others' apologies. After whatever situation transpired had calmed down, of course. They always knew to kindly and carefully approach whoever they hurt, make eye contact, and word their apologies in such a way that effectively communicated their apology for the correct reasons. And those being apologized to always knew to say, "I accept your apology," as opposed to "it's okay." Kids in my day couldn't figure those kinds of communication skills out until at least middle school or high school. The only time I would get a sarcastic sorry, accompanied with an eye roll, and running away would be from a kindergartner or an older child facing other difficulties. Story 18. I taught art for a while back. I know that a lot of people say things like, "Oh, these children, and they're all consuming technology." But a lot of kids are so excited about learning to make things using their devices. A big part of the sculpture class I taught was to make a statement using a three-dimensional printed sculpture. Even take something like Minecraft. I know it's a big phenomenon, but it's a huge sandbox to build things. I remember being a young teen when it came out, we would get so complex with our builds. Kids are learning to create in an incredibly different way. It can be really irritating when they latch onto something and run it into the ground, but they love learning new things and creating new things in an increasingly relevant way. Story 19. I wonder how the subculture kids are doing. Are there still goths and punks? I miss my clique of goth teens from high school. Those were the best days. Story 20. Secondary school. There is a lot less cigarette smoking than 20 years ago. A lot of kids use their electronic cigarettes, but to be honest, I would rather have that than cigarette smoking. Video games are a lot more accepted. Not just a niche played by nerds in arcades after school. Every social group plays video games. Kids are a lot more literate than when I was in school. Even if they speak English as a second language, the ubiquity of the internet has done wonders for basic literacy, although a lot of mistakes due to the way words sound are still common, there, should have and could have, etc. Story 21. The 8-year-olds I teach really make a huge deal about plastic. We watched the Blue Planet 2 episode with them, and since then, they have been so mindful and really want to protect the oceans. Story 22. The majority of my students are in the 18 to 22 age range. I am 37, for reference. Students are far kinder than they ever were when I was a student. They go out of their way to help each other, and they are much less judgmental than my cohort was. For the most part, they are really polite and respectful. I know a lot of professors deal with problems from cell phones, but I find that if I tell them to use their phones respectfully and only for class purposes, they do. The only real problem I seem to have with this cohort is the constant headphone wearing, but I think that's a battle I'm just going to lose. Edit. Wow, my inbox. Thank you all for responding about how headphones help you in class. For what it's worth, I allow students who need them to use them, provided they are registered with disability services. I also allow them in lab classes. It just gets really frustrating in lectures for me to have to repeat instructions because students couldn't hear over their headphones, or when someone is too busy rocking out to listen to the lecture. I'm going to have to think of some strategies to help those students who need them while still making sure they're not being disruptive or missing important stuff. Edit the second. I am truly, deeply sorry for my spelling error. I am leaving my very small mistake up as a badge of shame. Story 23. I'm a little late to the party on this one, but I'm a high school teacher. I teach both honors and inclusion classes, so I get a great variety of kids. Today, one of my students was very harsh to an autistic student who tried to politely sit next to her and charge his laptop. She said, "You're not sitting next to me," and put her leg in the chair so he couldn't sit down. Before I could respond, 5 of the tough girls in the class immediately jumped to the autistic student's defense, calling the girl rude and really letting her have it. They were firm and composed in their defense of the student and probably made the kid's day. Teaching can be rough sometimes, but they made me really proud today. I think a lot of our modern-day students are compassionate for others and incredibly intelligent. Don't let their abuse of smartphones fool you. Story 24. I teach at the college level. From what I can tell, many of them seem more open to having a variety of kinds of friends. Where I teach has a big hookup and party culture, but they seem to have genuine cross-gender friendships despite that, and in my opinion, that's been good for them. I feel like I should specify, since this comment gained attention, that this is dependent on who's available to you in terms of variety. For example, I went to a very racially diverse undergraduate school and had all kinds of friends. My students go to a very predominantly white college and do not have racial diversity in their friendships as a result, but I think a fair amount of that is structural. I also feel kind of like the bad guy here, but it's interesting that men in fraternities came up because a lot of times they are the exception with my students. They'll really only hang out with their brothers, and depending on the fraternity, can be really awful to women. Story 25. The high school students I work with today seem significantly more emotionally intelligent than those of my generation, especially the young men. They are aware of their own feelings and are better at separating their feelings from fact. For example, they're more likely to say, "I'm feeling X, Y, Z negative emotion right now," than "Ugh, this teacher just hates me, what a bad person." They're also better at seeing and accommodating emotions in other people. There's more awareness of and sympathy for mental health issues. Here's an illustration. The other day, some of the students I coach were conversing and one young man asked how frequently they had a good cry. They all answered, and he said, "I think I'm overdue for a good cry." And his peers started suggesting good movies to induce tears. It was an utterly shocking scene for me. Great, but nothing I would ever have expected. Kids can be stunningly introspective and empathetic when you ask them to talk about their interpersonal issues. There's a real effort to perspective-taking that goes beyond what I encountered at that age. Also, the students I work with have some selection bias, to be fair, but the ones I encounter as a whole care a lot about current events. It's like it's actually cool to know and care what's going on, and it's uncool not to. This is very different from how I grew up. I think a lot of them would agree with the statement being smart is cool and learning new things is fun, which seems simplistic but isn't true to everyone. I think it's related to the pressure to get into college. This pressure to be more well-rounded in your interests is a double-edged sword. Kids get social capital from being exposed to different ideas and cultivating interests, but it's also a difficult race to model yourself into some ideal. I should clarify that I am a coach, not a teacher, so my sample size is more homogeneous. I am also in a unique position where I regularly interact with urban public school kids, mostly low-income students of color, largely white, wealthy suburban public school kids, and first-year college students. These observations apply across that spectrum. Story 1. I work in healthcare, and sometimes you call a patient's adult children, and they politely ask that I do not contact them again. I trust that they have their reasons. Story 2. All of my kids are adults and very busy with their own lives and families. None of them are really the talk on the phone types, and they know when I call it is important. I have health issues that limit my ability to go out and visit, and I also work the third shift from 6 p.m. to 3:30 a.m., so my hours don't really match up to being too active with them. I live in a loft and do not have much room to have them over. But I do try to text my daughters a couple of times a week and play online games with my boys and chat with them on Discord. I've also learned to ask how they are all doing seriously and not just update them on news and health. I truly love my kids, but things are much different in my life being over 60 and single. I imagine differently and own up to the fact that a lot is on me. Story 3. Bad communication skills mainly. I'll admit my oldest son and I have never been very outwardly affectionate, but we've always had a good relationship as adults. We'll go weeks or a couple of months without talking sometimes, and it boils down to neither of us realizing that the other was wanting to hear from them the whole time. I was a military father, serving on a Navy submarine for nearly 3 decades. I was constantly away or unable to be present in my children's lives. I'll never regret my service to my country, but I will regret all the time I lost with my family and the relationships that never developed as well as they should have. I wasn't raised in an affectionate family like my wife was. I've had to do a lot of reflecting at this stage in life to realize that maybe I actually wasn't the best or most supportive father I should have been. Luckily, these days our relationship is better than it has been in several decades, and I'm beyond thankful for it. Story 4. I had an uncle who didn't talk to his kids. He wasn't part of the baby boomer generation, he was older, and his kids are just slightly too young to be boomers. It was a complicated childhood, and they didn't want to talk to him after he left their mother. Never them, according to them as well. They told him to stop calling, so he did. He said he understood where they were coming from, but he deserved to be happy too. He never called first to break the silence that had built between them, and it lasted for over a decade. However, he wrote letters to them every week. He respected that they didn't want to talk to him but refused to accept that they never wanted to hear from him again. He was stubborn. So he thought about it long and hard and spoke with my grandmother about it. They agreed that letters would work. They came in the mail, and then if they wanted to read them, they could. If they didn't, they could toss them out. Noir, mufu. But they would know he thought of them every time they threw one away. After 12 years, the kids called him, and he told them he wouldn't be the one to call first because they said not to, and until they said otherwise, they'd have to call him. Eventually, everything was rebuilt, and it was fine, but it was one time where I saw someone get it right. Story 5. Waiting to see whether anyone will say, they asked me to stop calling, and if I want to rebuild any trust, the first step is to respect that boundary. Story 6. Generation X reporting in. My children refuse to answer any of my phone calls because they are convinced that I am a servant of the devil. It's partly my fault because I helped to brainwash them into the same cult my parents indoctrinated me in. It's probably my biggest regret in life. Story 7. My dad exclusively calls and texts when he knows I'm at work. He doesn't actually want to talk. He wants to be the victim when I don't pick up. How does he know I'm at work? I've had a 9-to-5 job for 20 years. When he complains why I don't answer, I copy and paste the same message I've used for the past 5 years. I'm at work until 5. He once called me 4 times at 1 a.m. because I was off work. What do we talk about when I do answer? Well, I don't talk, he does. And it's always about the money he would give me if I would visit. He's getting older, not much time to visit. All this for an hour, never asking about me or my life, then hanging up because he's tired of his constant stream of consciousness blather and doesn't actually want to hear what I have to say. Too bad he abandoned me as a kid, refused to have me on his custody weekend, only called me 4 times in my 20s to ask for money, and now wants to try and start being a dad at nearly 60. He only started actively calling me as of 2022 and 2023, 4 times a week, rather than the old quarterly texts. Story 8. My in-laws didn't speak to their son for a couple of years. They even went to grief counseling. He was addicted to methamphetamine. At one point, he was living in a meth house and had an old car parked at their house, claiming it had something in it that put his parents in danger. He said dealers or someone were going to kill his parents. Looking back, we're pretty sure there was never a real threat and he just hadn't slept in days. His parents paid thousands for a nice rehab place to help him get back on his feet. They'd supported him financially for years before. Well, he walked out of the place and started walking down the highway. He wound up homeless in Florida, bouncing around different drug houses. The reason they stopped following him is because it was too painful to get their hopes up over and over again. They cut him off and gave up. Luckily, he got away from Florida. He's now doing landscaping in California. In his case, he's messed up so many times and so badly that it was on him to mend things. He's since been in touch with his parents and they're rebuilding the relationship. Story 9. My dad says, kids call the parents, kids visit the parents. The only time my dad ever initiates the call is birthdays, close to but not on the actual date. My son's birthday is 4 days before mine, so he'll call in between those dates and say happy birthday to us both. In order to have a relationship with him, and we have a good one, I have to put in all the work, even though, first, I am way busier than he is, and second, he has a landline and half the time I call, he isn't around, so I'll leave a message telling him to call back and he never does. So annoying. Story 10. Boomer here. It's generational with me. I didn't speak to my parents for years, and my son doesn't speak with me other than one-syllable answers. One of his children doesn't speak with him. None of us learned how to handle our emotions effectively when we were younger, and all of us are struggling to coexist with others when we have disagreements. There are no easy answers to this. I haven't given up, but I'm not pressing for communication right now. Story 11. OP, you should repost this question, specifying you only want to hear from the older generation. This thread is full of posts from younger people, and the posts from older individuals are probably downvoted. Story 12. On the other end, my mother tries to call every few months and texts maybe every other month. Occasionally, there will be radio silence for a year or so. I don't answer. I'll never truly forgive both of them for what they did and didn't do. I don't know how a mother could watch a grown man beat a stepchild and then put them on the street with nothing. Then blame me 10 years later for not coming back and say it's not our fault, you took it seriously. A single phone call to apologize for his actions would have changed the trajectory of my life. So they do call. It's just way too late to make any difference. Story 13. My grandfather was fearful of the reaction and could not get over his pride and admit his faults. I was with him when he passed away earlier this year. I know he loved all of his children and grandchildren. He was sorry for hurting them but could not admit it fully. Especially towards the end with his dementia, he would start to say something and then forget. I am the only one who knew how much he was hurting, and unfortunately, it did not go down well with my family trying to explain it. He was far from a perfect man. He made a lot of mistakes, but he loved and was proud of all of us. Story 14. Generation X here. My mom is mostly deaf, but she doesn't wear her hearing aids. When I go see her, we'd talk for 5 to 10 minutes with her constantly asking me to repeat myself before it occurred to her to put her hearing aids in. On the phone, it's the same, but she has a talent for turning the volume on her phone down and not being able to turn it up. She'll claim it's broken, but the problem is that she's just turned the volume down. Phone calls are useless unless my brother goes over to mom's place to answer the phone for her. I've considered setting up Skype on her personal computer because I can log in remotely and set the volume and such. However, she can barely use her iPhone, and she keeps forgetting how to use email. I don't even want to try to teach her to use Skype or FaceTime. It's sad because mom was always quite computer savvy. She got email in the mid-1990s when she was in her 60s. Now computers and cell phones are vastly easier to use, but her memory is going. Story 15. I do call. I text. She doesn't respond. She found a replacement for me. She has a loving husband, and I'm incredibly happy for her. Her dad came back into her life after 15 years and moved in with her. He is now doing to her what he did to me. He separated me from my parents when we were married. It lasted until I realized it was his insecurity. He is now doing it to our daughter. I have to wait it out. If I contact her, it starts the clock all over again. She says she will call when she's ready. It's been 5 months. She isn't ready, but she is seemingly happy. So I am moving on too. I will accept her back when she's ready. I wish she could figure out how to have all of us in her life and be happy. Story 16. I went no contact with my mom for a little while. Then I asked myself what she could even do to repair the relationship. The answer was nothing. There was no apology big enough, no change of behavior or level of understanding she could have. Then I realized that I had cut off the relationship as a way to demonstrate how big my pain was and how damaging my childhood had been. I needed to acknowledge that in myself, honor it, and realize that my experience was valid. Because until I accepted and validated my own experience, I was always needing my mother to validate it. To see my perspective, even though my perspective was rooted in childhood neglect and suffering at her hands. She couldn't see me as an adult because I grew out of the damage she couldn't admit she caused me as a child. I was a survivor because I had survived her. Every interaction was so painful because it couldn't be small. There were years of weight attached to every hello. Nothing was enough because I subconsciously needed her to say so much more. And even if she said every right thing, it wouldn't be enough. Again, my identity was rooted in being the daughter of my mother. Everything good and soft and kind about me was only visible when it was backlit by her selfish and immature glow. My growth had more meaning because she had refused to grow. I could not be who I was if she became more than she had been. So once I accepted that unsatisfactory truth that everything was true, that there was no apology that could fully realize my pain, and if there was, I didn't want it because a part of who I had become was born out of her lack of self-awareness. I realized I was weaponizing no contact. It was a signifier of how big she had messed up. Something looming over her that she couldn't ignore or neglect or give away. A scarlet letter of bad parenting. I decided to start over. To love my mom for what she was, as she was. To bring unconditional love into the relationship. The unconditional love that I had so badly needed as a child, that I deserved. I gave it to her. I loved her without needing her to become better, without wanting her to do anything for me, without needing her to notice that I was doing it. The truth is I had loved her unconditionally all along. That's why it hurt so badly. By being consciously aware of the dynamic, by never letting myself want or expect more from her, by accepting her as she was, I could love her unconditionally and safely. The way you can only safely love a feral cat, once you accept that it's feral. Every time I had hoped my mother would show up as domesticated, so I could get closer to her, I wasn't loving her unconditionally. I was hoping she'd change or become more, better, easier. As an adult, when I learned how to meet my own needs, how to be my own mother, I could see how much pressure and expectation I had put on one wild, untamed woman. I recognized that by trying to domesticate my emotionally feral mother, I was hurting both of us. She still occasionally bites me or scratches reflexively. But when she does, I don't let it fester or expect her to know better. I take care of my wounds and note the boundary for the future. A place we cannot go, a thing we cannot talk about, a person she cannot be, a side of myself I cannot share. More than strangers, sometimes less than friends. Like a feral cat that comes in the yard. I have to remind myself she is not a house cat. I can feed her and love her, but I keep a safe distance. If I pull her too close, she'll claw up my heart. A stinging reminder that my mother stays wild. Story 17. I don't know if my parents' phone makes outgoing calls. My dad called me once, and I jokingly said, "Who died?" He replied, "Your grandfather did." Oof. Story 18. 600 comments later, and not one from a parent that doesn't speak to their children. If someone saved one before it was deleted, I'd like to see that point of view. Story 19. Child of a boomer. If my mom calls and I don't pick up, she spends the entire time between when she calls and when I call her back worried that I am dead in a ditch somewhere. So we decided I have to call her, or she'll spend an entire day worrying. She does text me, but that's easier because I have a smartwatch. I can send her a one-letter response or emoji when I'm at work, so she knows I'm alive until I can text her back more fully. Story 20. It's time to share the missing reasons again. This is a deep dive comprehensive guide to the phenomenon of mostly boomers whose children disown them, and they claim they did nothing wrong. The whole website is a wealth of collected data, breakdowns of data, and inferences that can be made from that data. Most data was collected from estranged parent and grandparent rights forums, basically a group of self-absorbed, manipulative people with authority fetishes claiming they were amazing parents and encouraging others in those communities to insult their kids and make themselves feel better. Hope this helps shed some light on the subject and deters others in this community from believing comments that summarize to, "I have no clue why my offspring wants nothing to do with me. I wasn't a bad parent. I am a victim." Story 1. I always just thought of it as a game, but one you're not really trying to win, it's just fun to play. When you find an opponent that makes it more fun, you know you're doing it right. If not, then concede the match and move on. Story 2. Perhaps forget flirting. Just talk to people and be interested in what they say. Ask real questions. Listen to the answers. Work on improving your feel for the flow of conversation. But the trick is to actually be interested in what they are saying. Story 3. People don't care that much if you say something embarrassing or weird, so you shouldn't care either. From what I've learned, most girls actually like it when you're just talking about whatever you feel like, even if it's kind of goofy or weird, because it brings up genuinely good conversation that isn't the boring stuff they always talk about with guys trying to flirt with them. Story 4. Sincerity is what works best. Just be honest, not pushy, and not cliché. Do not start a conversation with the goal of getting them in bed. Start a conversation with the goal of having a good conversation. Story 5. Step 1. Decide you do not want to have sex, or rather, that sex is not the end goal of every conversation with the opposite sex. Step 2. Roll with the punches and learn to laugh at yourself. Step 3. When people flirt, respond in kind. It is good banter. The more it happens, the better you get. Flirting is a lot like comedy in my experience. You have to have high enough self-esteem to not get easily offended when someone makes fun of you, and you need the quick wit necessary to come up with clever responses. This takes practice and effort. Also, if you see flirting as fun in and of itself instead of seeing flirting as a pathway to sex, then you get good at flirting. And that is the story of how I became a massive flirt and also a virgin. If someone can tell me how to turn flirting into sex, you have my gratitude. Story 6. I think it's probably crucial for people to maintain an extremely light touch when flirting with strangers, and even more so when flirting with acquaintances. I'm an older male, but when I was middle-aged, I became extremely cautious with regard to flirting. I basically just dialed it back to being friendly and polite and being very discreet about complimenting anyone in any sort of manner that might be construed as having a sexual context. Now that I'm certifiably old, I've allowed myself to relax a little bit. Just a little, if only because there's so little chance that any young woman would take it seriously. But my awareness is always up with regard to exuding creepiness, which is something I generally try to avoid. Story 7. Talk to women you like as much as possible. Start conversations in the department of motor vehicles, public library, supermarket, dentist's office, or wherever. Expect plenty of rejection and just don't get discouraged. You're eventually going to understand what works for you. Story 8. Practice is definitely important, as learning how to read people is a skill that takes time to master. However, by far, the most important thing, at least for guys, is confidence. This does not mean cockiness, and a lot of guys get this confused. You cannot walk around acting like you are some big shot who demands attention. Rather, you need to come off as not insecure and confident in yourself. This means being humble but sure of yourself. Speak like you are sure of what you are saying, but that it is okay if they disagree. It is also a good idea to not approach women with the direct aim of picking them up. Being genuinely friendly is good, but do not seem too attached. Go up to a girl, talk to her for a couple of minutes, and then leave the scene in a way that seems genuine. If you follow them around, you seem desperate or worse, creepy. Even if they seem interested already, leaving the scene works great, as it makes you seem like you have other obligations, which for some women can feel like a challenge. Also, do not fall for the girls do not like nice guys trap. Women love nice guys, but they do not like insecure guys. Be kind, but make it clear through your actions that you do not need her to have a good time. If she sees that you are successful on your own, she will be much more inclined to find you attractive. And if a girl does not want your attention, act like it does not bother you, even if it does. There is nothing worse than a guy who gets angry because a girl is not interested. Your lack of care towards that situation might even make the girl think, why does not he care, and lead to her being interested in you after all. However, in this scenario, do not approach her again. No means no, and if she does find you interesting, she will let you know. Okay, so I realize that this has kind of become a guide to approaching women you are interested in rather than actually flirting, but the advice here should improve anyone's game. When it comes to flirting, the confidence thing still applies. And oh yeah, make fun of them in a joking way and see if they reciprocate. If they do, you are already halfway there. Good luck to everyone. I hope this helps. Story 9. Listen to comedy podcasts, especially if they have guests. They are the best at banter, and a sense of humor is the key. Just by listening, you will gain skills and confidence, as well as pick up many conversational techniques. Story 10. If you are a woman, find a guy that you like and walk casually past him. Allow your hand to brush against his lower back as you walk by. When he looks, look back and give him a little signal to approach you, and he will. A friend of mine does this, and it has a 95% success rate. If you are a man, just be rich and funny. Being rich and funny works really well. Touching women without consent is no good. Edit. It seems this isn't self-evident, so I'll state it here. No flirting approach is one size fits all. Great flirting is situational. So, of course, this approach isn't going to be the best for everyone, and that's okay. Story 11. Crank as many out as necessary and forget about sex for a minute. Replace talking to people with the Ford method. Remember people's names. Talk to as many new people as possible, all genders, whether you're attracted to them or not. 100 new people in 6 months is perfectly doable. If you can do that, talking to people and sex will naturally follow. Story 12. Stop being scared of rejection. How do you get to not be scared of rejection? Get rejected a lot and by someone you really like or love. Then you stop caring about flirting with random people. Also, starting off by telling someone they are pretty or handsome is a great first move. You do not have to come up with a smart pickup line. Story 13. My to-do list. Step 1. Search online for what is flirting. Step 2. Look for YouTube tutorials or any guidebooks. Step 3. Practice. Step 4. Give up and abandon all hope knowing your bloodline ends with you. Story 14. Lightness and genuine fun. You're not executing a plan to get laid. You're playing around with someone who might enjoy playing around with you. You can take it or leave it, they can take it or leave it. There's no commitment required and no drama if they don't reciprocate, just move along. If they join you in that safe space, you're still not trying to get laid. You're trying to engage them in some playfully antagonistic banter or some slightly snarky mutual compliments and smiles. They want to see if you catch what they're dealing out, if you're actually paying attention and trying to join in, or if you're just walking through a checklist that you hope ends in intimate moments. They want to gauge if you're relaxed and confident, suggesting calm comfort, or if you've got an agenda suggesting potential red flags. There might come a point in the interaction where either party suspects that they're interested or open to something more than playful, but even that may be nuanced and isn't just a straight-to-bed declaration. Your looks and smoothness, of course, help but are way less important than you think. Don't drag your mental models of your self-worth along with you. Let the interaction and the other party involved give you clues about how they feel about you and believe them. An interesting and fun person who actually listens is very compelling, even if it doesn't lead straight to intimacy. Plus, you should really be looking at the long term. Flirting might fundamentally change how the other party thinks about you, and this could lead to different, more connected interactions in the future after they've marinated on it for a while. Being nice and friendly with anyone is going to increase your connection with them. Flirting just adds a layer of, I'm paying particular attention to you because I'm interested in you. Story 15. Get comfortable with rejection and find ways to make people laugh. Once you're operating with confidence, not arrogance or entitlement, and humor, everything else will fall into place. Story 16. If you are a woman, just speak the same language they do, and sometimes that isn't even necessary. Just exist near them, breathe near them, be near them. If you are a man, be rich and good-looking. If you have these, you can say or do anything, and nothing you could do would really turn them off of you. So to simplify, if you are a woman, just be near men. If you are a man, just make money. Story 17. I want to add to practice. Be willing to walk away. If it's not working, walk away. Do it for its own sake, for the practice, for the fun, not for the results. Story 18. Honest to God, play some dating simulations. It sounds stupid, but they genuinely do teach you some interesting tactics for different personality types and often rely on one of the biggest hurdles for people who want to flirt well. You have to not be a jerk. Story 19. Be confident while at the same time self-deprecating and vulnerable enough to let them see the real you every now and then. Usually works for me. Also, ask a lot of open-ended questions and listen longer than you normally would. Story 20. Practice and take the right advice. Don't listen to all the alpha male nonsense out there. The most important thing is to be confident and comfortable. I know that's easier said than done, but fake that mindset until it sinks in. If your confidence is really lacking, I'd suggest going to the gym. Even if you don't look any different after a few months of exercise, your confidence will have skyrocketed. From a guy's perspective, women like how you make them feel when you're around. I know that's vague, but it's true. Looks can get your foot in the door, but if you want to keep someone, you need to make them feel better with you around. Story 21. I tend to say something outlandish that I know the girl will disagree with. Then I keep making statements that contradict my initial statement so that it becomes obvious that I was just joking, but I keep a straight face. It's fun to fake argue for most girls. I have no idea why it works, but it does. Story 22. Act interested in what the other person is saying while staying in close proximity. If the conversation goes well, slowly get closer until you are almost touching them. If they seem to like you getting closer, it means they like you. That's always worked for me. Story 23. You just have to do it. We all have different personalities and traits, so what works for me wouldn't necessarily work for you. One thing I will say, don't be self-deprecating, it's usually not very funny. Story 24. Practice it with people you know you'll never see again. Walk down a busy street, especially in a tourist area if you can, and say hi to every attractive person you see as they walk past you in the opposite direction. You don't do it with the expectation that it will lead to anything. You do it to build confidence, which is really the key to flirting. Story 25. Confidence without arrogance. Talk to your target as if they are a person, not some mythical creature. Laugh at the person, at yourself, at anything. Be engaging, such as by asking the person questions about their interests or jobs. Ask follow-up questions to show you're listening. Be interesting yourself. Be assertive without being creepy. Read the room. Understand that being a good flirt does not mean you'll be successful 100% of the time. Most of all, don't make it so obvious you're flirting. Have some chill. Story 26. I once asked my boyfriend what made him want a second date with me, but not with other girls he had previously taken out. He said I was the first one to not take out my phone during conversation and to actually care about what he was saying. We've been going out for close to 7 years now. Also, from my point of view, I love the way he didn't take himself too seriously. He wasn't there to prove he was the best. He was there to make sure I had the best time, and that made a huge difference. By the way, try to avoid quoting shows repeatedly. People want to get to know you, not the character you're quoting. Story 27. I would say to get good at flirting, know a lot about the person you want to try to flirt with, but not in a weird way. Just talk and get to know her or him. Then, maybe after a month or two, ask her or him on a date if you're brave at the time. You're welcome. Story 28. Ask a question that the person you are talking to may be or is an expert on. In fact, they don't even have to be an expert. Could simply be their job that you don't have any idea about. Get them to talk about themselves and then comment from there. Try and show some genuine interest. Story 29. Women's advice. Get used to talking to people. This means listening and talking about the topics they know or are interested in. Everything else is secondary. Story 30. Learn to identify people who will play along and might like it from people who are definitely not into you or do not want anything to do with it. You will not completely sway someone who does not like you with an ingenious one-liner. It is more of a read the room first thing. Story 31. Humor. Nothing is more fulfilling than having a positive and enjoyable conversation with someone attractive. If it's hard to be funny, you're probably overthinking it with the pressure and nerves. Just keep it light and enjoyable. If it's hard to keep a conversation going, try to genuinely be interested and curious. You'd be surprised how easy it is to strike up a conversation by just wanting to know them more. Story 32. Honestly, by far the largest thing, I think, is confidence without bragging and showing genuine interest. The energy of, I know I'm great. Let's truly see if you are too, is really sexy and addictive. Story 33. Smile, compliment, exude confidence. Go into a conversation not just as if you are trying to win them over, but also with the mindset that you will walk away if it is uninteresting to you as well. That isn't just a tip. That's the actual mentality you need to have, or they will sense the desperation. A little harsh there, but that is the harshness I apply to myself when distinguishing between doing things right and doing them wrong. Story 34. You learn about the person you are flirting with. If they like your flirts, they will smile and flirt back with you. If they do not like your flirts and are offended, back away and let them move out of your orbit. They are trouble.